At times, the world can make us feel adrift, as if navigating a labyrinth with no clear exit in sight. However, solace and guidance can be found in the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, a school of thought deeply rooted in the wisdom of legendary Greek philosophers. This philosophy transcends mere historical knowledge. It invites us on an enlightening journey into the core of Stoic beliefs, showcasing their potent concepts and expressive language. Engaging with this video on Stoicism isn't merely an educational endeavor. It's an immersive exploration into the philosophy's fundamental teachings on virtue, wisdom, and ethical living. Through this journey, you'll discover how Stoicism's age-old principles remain relevant and transformative in the contemporary world. As you absorb the sound of my voice, allow the Stoic tenets to both challenge and comfort you. This experience offers more than a lesson in philosophy. It presents a chance to profoundly alter your outlook on life. Welcome to the captivating realm of Stoicism. Your expedition commences now. In the ancient world, philosophy held a place of paramount importance among Greeks and Romans, akin to the role of religion in modern society. They relied on logic and reasoning rather than divine revelation to articulate their philosophical argument. Cicero, in his treatise De Officiis on Duties, poses a poignant question. When seeking the essence of virtue, to what should we turn if not to philosophy? This highlights a critical distinction. While truths based on authority are imparted from a tender age, those that appeal to logic must patiently await the maturation of rational thought. From birth, we are each inducted into a specific religious tradition, be it Eastern, Western, Anglican, or another. Yet, in ancient times, a young Greek or Roman, driven by the advice of a friend or inspired by a great orator's speech, would consciously choose to align with one of the major philosophical schools. Such a decision was often lifelong, with shifts in allegiance being rare and subject to criticism. For instance, one branded as a deserter for transitioning from Stoicism to the teachings of the Cynics highlighted the era's rigid philosophical affiliations, comparable to our modern-day political loyalties. Upon joining a philosophical school, a student would wholeheartedly adopt its doctrines, covering a wide range of topics beyond just the nature of death, which was a primary area of contention among the schools. This narrative underscores the integral role philosophy played in shaping the intellectual and moral frameworks of ancient societies, offering timeless insights into the pursuit of knowledge, virtue, and ethical living. The Stoics and Epicureans diverged significantly in their philosophical outlooks, not only in the realm of ethics but also in their approaches to religion, science, and the broader scope of philosophy itself. Aristotle, for instance, harbored the belief that young males were not yet suitable recipients for the teachings of moral philosophy. The perspectives a young man held on various subjects were fundamentally shaped by how he addressed and interpreted questions of moral philosophy. Cicero, in his Reflections, often highlighted the critical nature of the decisions made early in life, particularly how a young individual might prematurely affiliate with a philosophical school before fully possessing the capacity for independent judgment. This historical observation resonates with contemporary concerns about the perils of young individuals committing to ideologies or directives without first developing a robust personal ideology. The argument was posited that a young person's exercise of private judgment was essentially limited to selecting an authoritative figure or doctrine to follow, thereafter placing unwavering trust in that chosen authority for all subsequent decisions. This echoes a familiar debate from the past, wherein Cicero conceded that relying on philosophical minds might seem sensible unless the cultivation of speculative, independent thought was deemed crucial in the quest for true philosophical wisdom. The implication being that without engaging in speculative thinking during youth, the pressures and responsibilities of later life would likely preclude any opportunity to develop such critical perspectives. Zeno of Citium, the progenitor of Stoicism, whose life spanned from 347 to 275 BC, embarked on his teaching career relatively late, at the age of 40, after having fully matured both intellectually and philosophically. He commenced his teachings in 315 BC, marking the onset of his contribution to Stoic philosophy. Zeno's death in 322 BC symbolized not just the loss of a great philosophical figure, but also the conclusion of what is often regarded as the golden era of innovative Greek thought. His legacy, however, underscores a significant historical narrative. The importance of fostering a philosophical mindset and the value of speculative thinking as foundational elements in the pursuit of wisdom, ethics, and understanding in the complex tapestry of human life. This narrative invites reflection on the importance of critical thinking and the enduring impact of philosophical teachings on shaping ethical and moral frameworks across generations. From the Ionian philosophers who pondered the physical structure of the universe, to the Pythagoreans fascinated by the mystical qualities of numbers, ancient Greek thought was rich and diverse. Heraclitus introduced the concept of a world in perpetual change, anchored in his philosophy of fire, while Democritus and Leucippus laid the groundwork for atomic theory, suggesting the universe was composed of indivisible units. Socrates, on the other hand, shifted the focus to human ethics and morality, employing a dialectical method to explore the essence of virtue and justice. Plato and Aristotle furthered this inquiry, discussing ethical and metaphysical topics with a blend of informality and systematic analysis. Subsequent philosophical schools, while not significantly expanding the domain of philosophy with new doctrines, emphasized and extended the ideologies of their predecessors, sometimes stretching these ideas to their logical extremities. Among the most enduring contributions of Greek philosophy is the principle that virtue and ethical living hold intrinsic value, transcending the consequences or the brevity of life. This tenet, particularly resonant in Stoicism, underscores a life committed to moral integrity and the distinction between right and wrong. Despite Cicero's identification with the academic school, he conceded a unique respect for Stoicism, adopting its vernacular in his critiques of Epicureanism and acknowledging Stoics as the true philosophers. The Stoic influence permeated the Roman cultural and intellectual landscape, inspiring some of Virgil's most profound works and even finding its way into Horace's writings. Albeit with a touch of humor, Stoicism not only elevated the oratory of Persius and Juvenal, but also left a lasting imprint on Roman law, shaping the moral philosophy that would influence generations. Remarkably, the Stoic ethos extended beyond the confines of the Greco-Roman world. In Alexandria, Jewish scholars interpreted Stoic principles through the lens of their own sacred texts, suggesting that Stoicism's moral philosophy echoed the deeper meanings of Moses' teachings. Although the Stoics may not have introduced novel philosophical concepts, they excelled in disseminating their ideas, making them accessible and relevant to daily life. Their legacy lies not in the originality of their thought, but in their profound impact on the moral and ethical discourse of their time and beyond, influencing a wide array of cultures and legal systems through the power of their moral convictions. Late Greek philosophy, particularly Stoicism, and its counterpart Epicureanism, was celebrated for its practical application to life. Both schools, despite their divergent perspectives on the essence of philosophy, regarded it fundamentally as the art of living well. While these philosophical traditions often found themselves in ideological conflict, they shared common ground in certain respects. The transition from the era of free city-states to monarchies marked a shift from public affairs to personal life, positioning happiness as an individual pursuit rather than a societal one, a departure from the views of Aristotle and, to an even greater extent, Plato. In the beginning, neither Stoicism nor Epicureanism showed a strong inclination towards speculative philosophy, and this tendency diminished further over time. Both represented innovative adaptations within existing philosophical contexts. Epicureanism emerged from the seeds of Cynicism, emphasizing simplicity and self-sufficiency, while Stoicism, also influenced by Cynic principles, evolved into a doctrine that emphasized resilience and the virtue of living in accordance with nature. For their foundational physical theories, both schools were content to draw upon pre-Socratic ideas. Stoicism found resonance with Heraclitus's dynamic conception of the universe as fire, and Epicureanism aligned with Democritus's atomic theory, advocating for a materialistic view of the world. Both schools positioned themselves in opposition to Platonic and Aristotelian metaphysics, particularly the concept of abstract forms or ideals. They grounded their philosophies in tangible realities, though their valuations of these realities diverged. The Stoics and Epicureans both prioritized the empirical world, but differed profoundly in their ethical and metaphysical emphases. Stoicism, with its focus on virtue as the highest good and living in harmony with the rational order of the cosmos, and Epicureanism in its pursuit of tranquility through the avoidance of pain and fear. The divergence between Stoicism and Epicureanism can perhaps be epitomized in the debate over the nature of the supreme good. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, might argue that the rift between the two schools is essentially a clash between the senses and the intellect, a reflection of their foundational disagreements over the role of pleasure, pain, reason, and virtue in the good. Stoicism advocates for a life led by reason and virtue above all, whereas Epicureanism suggests a life where happiness is achieved through the judicious management of desires and the pursuit of moderate pleasures. This philosophical battleground, then, is not just about differing doctrines, but about contrasting visions of human flourishing and the paths to achieving it. The Stoics, along with other ancient Greek philosophers, delve deeply into the nature of the intellect, perceiving it not merely as a faculty but as embodying the essence of a person. This profound reflection on intellect was part of a broader philosophical inquiry into the ultimate purpose of life, universally identified by the Greeks as the pursuit of happiness. However, this consensus on the objective of life's journey was where unanimity ended, giving way to a myriad of interpretations regarding the essence of happiness itself. For instance, Democritus posited that happiness resided in mental tranquility. Anaxagoras located it in contemplation. Socrates equated it with the acquisition of knowledge, and Aristotle saw it as the fruition of virtue, seasoned with a measure of fortune. Aristippus, on the other hand, distilled happiness to its simplest form, the state of being happy itself. These philosophical discourses were complemented by the perspectives of the lay populace, discernible not through their rhetoric, but through the tapestry of their daily lives. At a cursory glance, Zeno's contribution to the discourse on happiness, advocating for a life of consistency, might appear to offer little illumination. Yet, it is within this framework that the Stoic philosophy crystallizes the notion that only a life governed by reason, devoid of the tumult of emotions, can achieve true consistency. This philosophical baton was passed to Cleanthes, who enriched the Stoic doctrine by integrating the concept of living in accordance with nature, thereby completing the Stoics' venerable creed. The ancient Greeks harbored a conception of nature markedly different from contemporary understandings. They viewed nature not as a mere origin point, but as a direction towards an ideal state. Where modern discourse might refer to the natural state to denote a primitive condition, the Greeks envisioned it as the pinnacle of civilization. Similarly, the term natural for them implied not merely an entity's current or past state, but its optimal state under ideal conditions. Consequently, when they spoke of the natural apple, they did not refer to the wild, tart fruit, but to the cultivated, sweet apple of the Hesperids, guarded by a vigilant dragon. This philosophical stance led Aristotle to assert that the state emerging from the natural inclinations of social relationships was itself a natural phenomenon. This nuanced understanding reveals that both the ancient Greeks and contemporary societies employ the concept of nature in varied and often ambiguous ways, reflecting differing perceptions of reality and ideals. Peripatetics, a school of thought founded by Aristotle, offered a distinctive perspective on the nature of beings, asserting that the true essence of an entity is realized at the culmination of its process of becoming. They articulated this notion with clarity, stating that the intrinsic nature of any entity is what it becomes upon the completion of its growth, effectively equating an entity's nature with its fully realized form or purpose. In a similar vein, the Stoics posited that living in alignment with nature was synonymous with attaining the zenith of personal development and perfection. Given that humans are rational beings, the Stoics argued that fulfilling one's human duty necessitates leading a life guided by reason. They elevated virtue to the highest expression of reason, thus intertwining the paths of nature and virtue. This confluence of nature and virtue underpins the versatility of the Stoic maxim, which can be interpreted through various expressions, all converging on the imperative to lead a virtuous, stable, and rational existence. The Stoics also held philosophy in high regard, considering it an exploration of both divine and human matters. They segmented philosophy into three primary disciplines: physics, the study of nature; ethics, study of moral virtue; and logic, the study of reasoning. Although this tripartite division was not a novel invention by the Stoics, their endorsement and utilization of this framework contributed significantly to its prominence in philosophical discourse. Contrary to some claims, the Epicureans, followers of Epicurus who prioritized the pursuit of happiness through the avoidance of pain, did not outright reject logic. Rather, their divergence from Stoic philosophy was manifested in the adaptation of logic to accommodate empirical sensibilities, focusing on sense-derived ideas. This approach mirrors the evolution of philosophical methodologies, reminiscent of how Francis Bacon's Novum Organum sought to supplant Aristotle's Organum, signaling a shift towards empirical and inductive reasoning. Cleanthes, succeeding Zeno as the head of the Stoic school, recognized an even broader spectrum of philosophical inquiry, delineating 6 components: logic, rhetoric, ethics, politics, physics, and theology. This expansive view underscores the holistic approach the Stoics and their contemporaries adopted towards understanding the world, emphasizing the interconnectedness of logical reasoning, ethical living, political organization, physical laws, and spiritual beliefs in the pursuit of wisdom and virtue. Indeed, the classification of philosophy into logic, ethics, and physics can be understood as an organization of knowledge into its expression logics, its substance physics, and its application ethics. This framework posits a coherent structure for philosophical inquiry, where logic serves as the foundation for articulating and demonstrating knowledge. Physics explores the nature of existence, including the cosmos and the divine, and ethics addresses the practical implications of knowledge in guiding human actions and societal norms. Chrysippus, in his 4th book on Lives, delineates this hierarchical approach to philosophical study, advocating for a sequential exploration beginning with logic, followed by ethics, and culminating in physics, with the divine aspects of physics being the ultimate area of study. This sequence underscores a pedagogical pathway from the tools of reasoning through the examination of moral and ethical conduct to the profound contemplation of the natural and divine world. Plutarch's critique of Chrysippus for an alleged inconsistency, highlighting the foundational role of physics in establishing values, despite its recommended position as the last subject of study, touches upon a deeper philosophical debate. The sequence of learning does not necessarily reflect the ontological precedence or the foundational nature of one domain over another. While values and ethical principles may indeed be grounded in an understanding of the natural order and the structure of the universe, the methodological choice to study physics after logic and ethics can be justified pedagogically. It allows for a gradual buildup of knowledge, starting with the tools of thought, moving through the realm of human action and morality, and finally reaching the complexities of the natural and divine world. Sippis's teaching that moral principles are intrinsically linked to an understanding of physics underscores the interconnectedness of all philosophical domains. The idea that the moral and ethical dimensions of life are informed by the nature of the universe and our place within it suggests a holistic view of philosophy. This approach posits that a comprehensive understanding of the cosmos and its underlying principles can illuminate the essence of human nature and guide ethical conduct. Thus, even if the pedagogical journey in philosophy begins with logic and ethics before delving into physics, the ultimate integration of these domains reveals a unified field of inquiry aimed at understanding the world, our place in it, and how. In his third treatise on the gods, Sippis elucidates a profound linkage between the contemplation of good and evil, virtues and happiness, and the comprehensive understanding of the cosmos and its governance. He posits that there exists no more fitting inception for these ethical inquiries than the foundational principles derived from the nature of all things and the cosmic order. This assertion underlines the Stoic conviction that ethical considerations are inseparably bound to physical realities, suggesting that the virtues and moral judgments are ultimately rooted in the universal laws and the nature of existence itself. The Stoics, with their penchant for vivid metaphors, likened philosophy to a well-cultivated garden or farm, abundant in its yield. In this allegory, ethics represented the nourishing fruit, physics stood as the towering trees, and logic was envisioned as the protective wall. This imagery suggests a symbiotic relationship wherein logic safeguards and supports the pursuit of knowledge physics, which in turn fosters the cultivation of ethical living ethics. Alternatively, the analogy of an egg was employed, with logic forming the resilient shell, ethics the vital yolk within, symbolizing the essence of moral guidance. However, Posidonius, a later Stoic thinker, critiqued this segregation of philosophical disciplines, arguing instead for their intrinsic interconnection. He preferred the analogy of a living organism where logic constituted the bones and sinews, providing structure and strength. Physics was likened to the flesh and blood, embodying the sustenance and vitality of the body. And ethics was seen as the animating the whole with purpose and direction. This perspective underscores a holistic view of philosophy, where each component is essential to the integrity and function of the whole, mirroring the interdependent structures within a living being. The Stoics' intellectual lineage, following Aristotle and succeeding Theophrastus, showcases their pivotal role in advancing philosophical thought. Their innovative contributions and the enduring legacy of their teachings are symbolized by the anecdote of the library of Theophrastus, which, according to legend, was buried underground at Skepsis until its rediscovery approximately a century before the. This narrative not only highlights the Stoics' reverence for their philosophical heritage, but also their commitment to preserving and expanding upon the wisdom of their predecessors, thereby cementing their place in the annals of philosophical history as thinkers of profound insight and comprehensive understanding. The narrative surrounding the Organon, Aristotle's comprehensive set of treatises on logic, and its potential loss during the period following Theophrastus, illuminates a significant historical interlude in the transmission of philosophical knowledge. Under the stewardship of Strato, who succeeded Theophrastus and was primarily focused on natural sciences, the peripatetic school seemingly narrowed its intellectual breadth. Cicero, leveraging dramatic license in his writings, attributes to Cato the assertion that later peripatetics lacked a robust understanding of logic. This critique contrasts sharply with the Stoic school's reputation, particularly that of Sippus, whose mastery of logic was so esteemed that some speculated it mirrored divine reasoning. The Stoics, despite their profound logical acumen, were often critiqued for their deficiencies in rhetorical eloquence. Among Roman Stoics, Cato stood out as an exception, being the sole figure Cicero deemed truly eloquent. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the Stoic tradition, expressed a certain satisfaction in eschewing ornate speech and poetry, favoring a more straightforward communicative style. This preference, however, did not shield his writings from criticism for lacking gracefulness, a testament to the enduring importance of stylistic finesse in philosophical discourse. The early Stoic philosophers, despite their intellectual prowess and significant contributions to various domains of philosophy, faced the eventual obscurity of their works, with their legacies largely preserved through Cicero's accounts. This historical narrative underscores the pivotal role of rhetoric and dialectical skill in the preservation and dissemination of philosophical ideas. The terms in ancient philosophy encompassed a far broader spectrum than contemporary interpretations suggest, including dialectics, art of correct reasoning, rhetoric, the art of persuasive and clear communication, and discussions on linguistics, poetry, and what would now be classified as psychology. Stoicism divided logic into two main branches: rhetoric, the art of articulation in expository contexts, and dialectic, the method of engaging in precise argumentation through questioning and answering. These facets of logic were esteemed as virtues within the Stoic framework, which conceptualized virtue in comprehensive terms. This holistic view of philosophy, where eloquence and dialectical prowess were integral to the virtuous life, reflects a profound appreciation for the power of language and reason in shaping ethical and intellectual discourse. The historical evolution of these disciplines underscores the intricate relationship between the form and content of philosophical thought, highlighting the enduring significance of both logical rigor and rhetorical skill in the pursuit of wisdom. In delineating the structure of philosophy into three primary domains: physics, a broader study of the natural world; ethics, as the study of moral and virtuous living; to calculi, and logic, a study of reasoning, the Stoics established a comprehensive framework for understanding the complexities of the universe and human conduct. Within this framework, they further classified logic into two distinct yet complementary virtues: rhetoric and dialectic. The founder of Stoicism employed a vivid analogy to distinguish between these two. He likened dialectic to a hand, symbolizing its utility in grasping and dissecting arguments, and rhetoric to a palm, representing its capacity to envelop and convey ideas effectively. Diverging from a more amalgamated approach that might blend speech, poetry, and grammar indiscriminately, the Stoics pursued a more systematic subdivision of dialectic into two branches, one focusing on the significance of words and the other on their sounds kinetics. Sippus, elucidating this division, highlighted its encompassment of various linguistic elements, including the alphabet, parts of speech, soliloquies, barbarisms, errors in language use, ambiguities, meter, and music. This categorization, despite appearing eclectic at first glance, methodically addresses the foundational aspects of grammar. Phonology, study of sounds; morphology, the study of word forms or accidents; and syntax, the structure of sentences. The Stoic approach to language, paralleling their treatment of logic, aimed to elucidate and rectify errors in both expression and reasoning. To their analysis of the alphabet, recognizing 7 vowels and 6 mutes, showcases an early understanding of phonetic distinctions, including a more nuanced recognition of aspirate sounds, which they rightly did not categorize as completely mute. Latin sadui in their exploration of speech, the Stoics identified 5 critical components: The appellative anaidiapirman noun, the appellatival components, the verb portakel components, the verb our taker. This classification reflects a sophisticated grasp of linguistic structure, underscoring the integral role of language in the Stoic philosophical system. Through this detailed attention to the mechanics of language, the Stoics demonstrated their belief in the importance of clear and precise communication, both in the articulation of philosophical ideas and in the pursuit of virtue and wisdom. The Stoics, with their keen interest in linguistics, posited that speech was underpinned by 5 virtues, which could be compromised by 2 principal vices, barbarism and solecism. Barbarism pertained to errors in phonology or morphology, essentially a deviation from the correct use or form of words, while solecism represented a syntactical error, a breach in the rules governing sentence structure. These concepts underscored the Stoic commitment to precision and clarity in language, reflecting the broader philosophical emphasis on orderly and rational thought. The Stoic philosophy regarding the development of the human mind draws an intriguing parallel to the ideas later expressed by John Locke. The Stoics conceptualized the mind of a child as tabula rasa, a blank slate upon which sensory experiences imprint the initial concepts, a notion they described using the term fantasia, which translates to an impression in the soul. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, envisioned these impressions as being akin to the way a signet ring leaves its mark on wax, suggesting a direct and formative impact of external stimuli on the soul. Cleanthes, a successor to Zeno, embraced this metaphor literally, envisioning the soul as a receptive substance that external realities could impress upon. Sippus, however, wrestled with this analogy, contemplating it as indicative of a dynamic transformation within the soul itself. He theorized that the soul undergoes change with each external influence, much like how the atmosphere is altered by the collective sound of many voices. According to Sippus, the soul, in its receptivity to sensory impressions, plays a passive role. Yet these impressions of fantasia reveal both their existence and their causal origins, analogous to how light illuminates both itself and the objects it encounters. In this framework, when an individual perceives something, such as a white object, the soul registers this sensation, enabling the person to acknowledge the presence of the object. The process of understanding then involves naming what is perceived, with language serving as the medium through which this recognition is expressed and affirmed. This sequence underscores the Stoic view that cognition begins with sensory perception, which is then articulated through language, reflecting a deep integration of epistemology and linguistics. The distinction between genuine sensory impressions and mere imaginations, phantasma te presens, a philosophical challenge, particularly in discerning the reality of what is perceived. Stoic thought, resonating with David Hume's later distinction between impressions and ideas, suggests that the veracity of an impression can often be gauged by its vividness and the coherence of the sensory experience it invokes. Thus, the Stoics offered a nuanced understanding of perception, cognition, and language, framing the mind as a domain where external realities are internalized, processed, and articulated. This interplay between the sensory and the rational, the passive and the active aspects of the soul, highlights the Stoic endeavor to bridge the gap between the external world and internal comprehension, underpinning their broader philosophical objectives of achieving wisdom and living in accordance with nature. So the Stoics, delving deeper into the nature of perception and cognition, emphasize the importance of discerning beyond mere impressions, a stance that distinguishes their philosophy from Hume's empirical skepticism. They introduce the concept of cataleptic fantasia, or gripping fantasy, a type of impression so compelling and vivid that it demands assent from the soul, asserting its reality not merely in terms of existence, but as a reflection of an external. These gripping fantasies are self-evident, Their very occurrence is considered proof of their truthfulness and their corresponding external objects. This Stoic doctrine suggests that the soul naturally assents to what is manifestly clear and evident, aligning with its intrinsic inclination towards self-preservation and the pursuit of truth. Comprehension, or the soul's acknowledgement of a gripping fantasy, signifies a profound engagement with reality, where the impression is so distinctly marked by an existing object that it leaves no room for doubt regarding its source. The specificity of this concept is further refined with the qualification in virtue of that object itself, which serves as a safeguard against deceptive perceptions. This clause addresses scenarios where an impression originates not directly from the object it purports to represent, but from the subjective mental state of the perceiver, as illustrated in the example of a person afflicted by madness, mistaking his sister for a fury, while the impression has a basis in reality. The person's sister, it is distorted by the individual's own psyche rather than the inherent qualities of the object. In this context, the early Stoics posited gripping fantasies as the sole reliable indicators of truth, a principle that underscores their commitment to an objective understanding of the world grounded in the veracity of sensory experience. However, this stance is nuanced by the acknowledgement of the complex interplay between external reality and internal perception, highlighting the Stoics' sophisticated exploration of epistemology. Their philosophy, by requiring that true impressions must incontrovertibly stem from their external objects, provides a framework for distinguishing between genuine knowledge and mere belief, thereby navigating the challenges of discerning reality in a world where perceptions can be both vivid and misleading. The later Stoics refined their epistemology with the addition of a crucial caveat: when there is no impediment. This nuance addressed scenarios where external or internal factors could obstruct the accurate perception of reality, illustrated through mythological examples. Stories like Admetus failing to recognize his wife despite her presence, or Menelaus doubting the real Helen's identity on the island of Pharos, underscored situations where disbelief stemmed not from the unreliability of the senses themselves, but from psychological or contextual barriers that hindered accurate recognition. These examples highlighted the Stoics' acknowledgement that certain impediments could distort one's perception of reality, thereby necessitating this amendment to their theory of cognition. The concept of cataleptic fantasia, or gripping fantasy, was thus contextualized to account for situations devoid of such impediments, wherein the impression was so compelling that it demanded assent from the observer. This framework allowed the Stoics to maintain their confidence in the reliability of sensory impressions under conditions where no external or internal obstacles interfered with the perceptive process. Expanding the scope of fantasia beyond mere sensory impressions, the Stoics distinguished between reasonable agite and non-sensible allegos fantasies. This division allowed for the inclusion of abstract concepts and non-physical entities, which, according to Stoic thought, could only be apprehended through reason. This perspective posits that abstract notions like Platonic forms, examples given include horse, man, and animal, exist only as mental constructs rather than tangible realities. Through this lens, the Stoics can be seen as precursors to conceptualism, the philosophical theory that universals only exist within the mind's understanding. Finally, the Stoic use of comprehension extended to encompass both sensory and rational understanding. This included the differentiation between simple sensory distinctions, such as color or texture, and more complex judgments based on reason, such as the existence and justice of the gods. The Stoics' approach to knowledge and belief, emphasizing both empirical evidence and rational deduction, mirrors aspects of John Locke's epistemology. Locke, much like the Stoics, argued that the mind forms ideas through direct sensory experience and reflection. suggesting a philosophical lineage that connects Stoic thought with the empiricism of Locke's essay concerning human understanding. In essence, the Stoic philosophy offers a rich and nuanced exploration of human cognition, blending empirical observation with rational analysis to construct a comprehensive framework for understanding the world. This intellectual heritage, emphasizing the interplay between sensory data and abstract reasoning, foreshadows and aligns with later philosophical developments, illustrating the enduring influence of Stoic thought on the evolution of Western philosophy. So the Stoics, in their exploration of knowledge and cognition, laid out a framework remarkably akin to the methodologies later articulated by John Locke, referred to here as Lowe, especially in how they conceptualize the generation and categorization of ideas. This Stoic framework proposed various pathways through which the mind could acquire ideas, encompassing direct observation, analogy, composition, transformation, and absence, among others. Such methods illustrate the Stoic commitment to a comprehensive understanding that bridges sensory perception and rational interpretation. Just as Locke suggested that simple ideas could be formed through direct sensory experience, the Stoics recognized that direct encounters with the world, such as seeing a depiction of Socrates, serve as a foundational source of knowledge. 2. Stoics and Locke both acknowledged that comparison and analogy are vital in forming concepts that extend beyond immediate sensory experience, such as imagining giants or pygmies from ordinary human proportions, or conceptualizing the Earth's center by extrapolating from smaller spheres. Transformation or change as a source of new ideas, like imagining beings with eyes on their chests, showcases the mind's ability to reconfigure known elements into novel forms. In the creation of composite ideas, such as a centaur from merging distinct entities. Human and horse reflects a sophisticated cognitive operation recognized by both Stoic and Lockean epistemology. 5. Understanding concepts through their opposites, such as death in relation to life, highlights a method of conceptual differentiation and definition. So it is understood that social constructs, like the meanings of words or the notion of place, arise from collective agreement and usage, a point Locke also touches upon in his discussion of language. Ideas derived from nature, such as innate notions of fairness and goodness, suggest a predisposition towards certain moral and aesthetic judgments, aligning with the Stoic belief in a natural moral order. Absence, the concept of absence or lack, leading to the creation of ideas like a handleless object, underscores the mind's ability to conceive of entities through the negation of features. The Stoic definition of knowledge as a firm and unassailable assent to impressions of phantasia that are impervious to refutation by reason at first seems to privilege sensory-derived knowledge. However, upon a broader analysis, it becomes evident that this definition encompasses both empirical evidence and the logical coherence of ideas. This Stoic approach mirrors Locke's view of knowledge as the mind's grasp on both the empirical world and the logical relationships between ideas. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, famously used physical gestures to communicate philosophical concepts to his students, symbolizing the embodied and practical nature of Stoic philosophy. This method of teaching emphasizes the Stoics' belief in the integration of theory and practice, knowledge and action, reflecting a holistic approach to understanding the world. In summary, the Stoic method of categorizing and acquiring knowledge through a variety of means, ranging from direct observation to the understanding of absence, parallels Locke's epistemological inquiries. Both philosophical traditions strive to bridge the gap between sensory information and the realm of ideas, offering a nuanced perspective on the origins and nature of human understanding. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, employed a memorable physical analogy to elucidate the process of acquiring knowledge, using the actions of his hands to symbolize the progression from initial perception to fully assured knowledge. He began with an open hand to represent a fantasia impression, a basic sensory interaction with the world. A slight compression of his fingers indicated syncatathesis, the mind's initial agreement with the sensory impression. Closing his fist signified catalepsis, comprehension, a firmer grasp on the impression indicating a more secure and scrutinized understanding. Lastly, clasping his left hand around the right fist depicted episteme, support knowledge, symbolizing a fully confirmed and unshakable conviction resulting from rigorous examination and acceptance of the impression. So the Stoic interpretation of concepts, ideas, as dreams for the rational soul, underscores their view of ideas as constructs that gain significance only through their application or engagement by the mind. Just as currency, shillings and sovereigns, holds value primarily in the context of transactions, ideas acquire meaning through their active engagement by reason. Of course, this perspective highlights the Stoics' belief in the dynamic interplay between innate dispositions and the enriching influence of education and experience in the formation of ideas. Anticipations are innate predispositions towards certain ideas, shaped partially by nature, while other ideas develop through education and rational reflection. The Stoics posited that reason, a faculty that aligns humans with the divine, emerges gradually from sensory experiences rather than existing as an innate principle. This developmental view places the senses at the foundation of the cognitive process, suggesting a natural maturation of reason that coincides with physical and cognitive milestones around adolescence. Addressing the nature of being, the Stoics made the bold assertion that existence is confined to the corporeal realm, challenging prevailing philosophical views and setting the stage for debates with other schools of thought. They recognized substance, in Aristotelian terms, as the only category of being that maintained its validity within their framework, albeit in a more restricted sense as primary substance. The Stoics proposed 4 categories to describe the material world. Substance, that which underlies quality, the way a body is disposed, state, quality, condition of being in a certain state, and relation, how a body is related to others. This schema aimed to capture the complexity of physical existence, but raised questions about the ontological status of immaterial entities like time, space, words, and the concept of the void. Of this Stoic framework, emphasizing the primacy of the corporeal and the gradual emergence of reason from sensory perception, presents a distinctive ontology and epistemology. It challenges us to reconsider the foundations of knowledge, the nature of concepts, and the very essence of being, prompting ongoing dialogue and reflection among subsequent generations of philosophers. The Stoics confronted the ontological challenge of conceptualizing immaterial entities, such as time, space, and abstract concepts, without ascribing to them physical bodies, while still acknowledging their necessity for understanding and discourse. This challenge was navigated through the innovative categorization of somewhat, a conceptual domain designed to encompass both corporeal entities, bodies, and incorporeal entities, bodies without bodies, such as time and space. These incorporeal entities, though lacking tangible existence, were recognized as essential elements of Stoic metaphysics, playing pivotal roles in the structure of reality as understood within their philosophical system. In their examination of language and logic, the Stoics adopted a comprehensive approach that blurred the distinctions between these fields. Their conceptual framework was expansive, covering various linguistic elements, from individual words and sentences to complex logical constructs like syllogisms. This inclusivity is reflected in their concept of a deepen, a techne to find as an entity corresponding to a rational impression or fantasia, According to Stoic theory, a dict embodies the meaning or proposition conveyed by speech, existing independently of physical form, thereby distinguishing it from the vocal sounds that convey it and the external objects it references. The Stoic analysis of communication identified three components: the physical sound produced, the immaterial meaning conveyed, and the physical object described. This tripartite model illustrates the Stoic effort to reconcile the material aspects of speech with the immaterial nature of meaning and logic. For instance, when observing a person named K walking, the physical act observed and the sound of the statement K is walking are both considered material entities. In contrast, the meaning of the statement, indicating motion and attributing it to Ki, is an immaterial construct, reflecting the Stoics' understanding of the interplay between language, thought, and reality. Stoic logic, characterized by its complexity and depth, represented a significant departure from Aristotelian logic, particularly in its approach to immediate inference and other logical operations. The Stoics' contributions to logic and their exploration of inference demonstrate their commitment to advancing philosophical discourse and their openness to refining and differentiating their theories from those of their predecessors. This intellectual rigor and innovation underscore the Stoic commitment to a comprehensive understanding of the world that integrates material and immaterial dimensions, offering a unique perspective on the relationships between existence, knowledge, and life. Chrysippus's speculation on the vast number of permutations possible within just 10 propositions highlights the Stoics' ambitious exploration of logical complexity, far exceeding the mathematical estimates proposed by Hipparchus. The mathematician's calculation of 10,349 forms for affirmative propositions and 31,900 for negative ones showcases an early attempt to quantify logical variations, an endeavor that underscores the rich interplay between mathematics and logic in ancient thought. This divergence in the number of affirmative versus negative forms illustrates the nuanced understanding of the Stoics regarding the impact of positive and negative statements on logical outcomes. The Stoic dissatisfaction with mere negation led to a more nuanced classification of statements, including not just simple negations but also negative, articulative, privative, and even supernegative forms. This expansion beyond basic negation reveals the Stoics' commitment to capturing the full spectrum of logical possibilities and their implications for truth and falsehood. In contrast to the Aristotelian syllogistic, which is built around three figures and various moods, Stoic logic focused on the moods of more complex syllogisms, such as those found in conditional reasoning. The Stoics developed specific rules concerning the material implications of statements, particularly within conjunctive syllogisms. The principle that truth follows from truth, but falsehood can follow from either truth or falsehood, reflects a sophisticated understanding of logical sequences and the conditions under which statements can be considered true or false. The example provided, where the truthfulness of it being day leads logically to the truthfulness of it being light, versus the ambiguity of falsehoods leading to either true or false conclusions, illustrates the Stoics' intricate approach to logic, to their exploration of logical consequences, even in hypothetical scenarios deemed impossible, such as the earth flying, demonstrates a willingness to engage with abstract and counterfactual propositions to test the boundaries of logical reasoning. Diogenes Laertius's brief overview of Stoic logic, despite its conciseness, hints at the depth and complexity of Stoic logical theory as evidenced through the use of syllogisms in philosophical arguments. Zeno's syllogism advocating for temperance and the application of the chain argument, or sorites, exemplify the Stoics' utilization of logic not merely as an abstract exercise, but as a practical tool for ethical reasoning and philosophical. The Stoics' contributions to logic, particularly their expansion of the types of logical statements and their nuanced approach to conditional reasoning, mark a significant advancement in the field, offering insights that continue to inform contemporary understanding of logical and philosophical inquiry. The Stoics' embrace of complex logical constructs and syllogistic reasoning was not just an academic exercise, but a means to articulate and defend philosophical principles central to their understanding of virtue and happiness. So their method of using a series of connected syllogisms to demonstrate how wisdom inherently leads to happiness exemplifies this approach. By logically linking the qualities of being wise, temperate, constant, unperturbed, and free from sorrow to ultimately achieving happiness, the Stoics employed this pure intellectual game to delve into the essence of ethical living. So this chain of reasoning underscores their belief in the sufficiency of wisdom for attaining a fulfilled life, illustrating the integral role of logical deduction in Stoic ethics. The Stoics' engagement with contemporary philosophical debates often placed them in opposition to the ideas prevalent among the Megarians, particularly those of Eubulides of Miletus, a student of Euclid's and a notable figure known for his paradoxes. Despite the rivalry, or perhaps because of the intellectual challenge it presented, both critics and admirers of the Stoics recognize the sophistication and rigor with which they approach these debates. Their willingness to confront and dissect the many false ideas circulating in Greek philosophical circles attests to their commitment to clarity, precision, and truth, whether they were commended for their subtlety or criticized for their perceived seriousness. One of the most famous contributions of Eubulides to these philosophical discussions was the liar paradox, which plays on the contradiction inherent in statements that refer to their own veracity. The paradox, in its simplest form, questions whether a statement that declares itself a lie can be true or false without leading to a logical contradiction. This paradox, among others, was a playground for Stoic logic, as it tested the limits of their logical frameworks and the ability to resolve or address paradoxes that challenge the consistency of logical reasoning. The Stoics' interest in such paradoxes and their efforts to navigate through them reflect a broader philosophical endeavor to understand the nature of truth, language, and reality. So their approach to logic, characterized by a deep engagement with the structure and implications of arguments, contributed significantly to the development of logical theory and philosophical methodology. Through their analyses, the Stoics sought not only to advance their own philosophical agenda, but also to foster a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of the world, demonstrating the enduring relevance and impact of their thought in the history of philosophy. Chrysippus's extensive engagement with the liar paradox through his comprehensive treatise demonstrates the Stoics' deep commitment to grappling with complex logical and philosophical issues. His multifaceted approach, encompassing explanations, critiques, and polemics against various interpretations of the paradox, underscores the Stoics' rigorous exploration of logic and its paradoxes. This dedication to addressing the inexplicable reflects their broader philosophical endeavor to understand the limits and capabilities of human reasoning. The anecdote of Philetus of Cos, humorously lamenting his demise due to the mental turmoil caused by engaging with the paradox, illustrates the challenging nature of these philosophical puzzles and their impact on thinkers. In transitioning to the Stoics' views on the soul and ethics, their conceptualization of the soul's structure is notably devoid of emotions as distinct entities. Instead, the Stoics posited that emotions are disturbances of the mind, resulting from false judgments or the perversions of untruth. This perspective aligns with their belief in the unity of reason and emotion, suggesting that passions are not separate from rational thought, but are rather degenerative states of it. The Stoic solution to the turmoil caused by emotions was not to segregate reason and passion, but to cultivate a mind that adheres to virtue and truth, thereby preventing the perversion of judgment that leads to emotional distress. The Stoics' assertion that the soul comprises parts including the five senses and aspects of physical and rational capacity, yet explicitly excludes emotions as independent components, highlights their unique approach to psychology and ethics. Emotions, in the Stoic view, are symptomatic of a mind that has deviated from reason, reinforcing their philosophy that the path to happiness and virtue lies in the cultivation of a rational and unperturbed mind. This philosophy positions the guiding principle or hegemonikon, essentially the rational part of the soul, as the sovereign ruler over the individual's internal life. It is this rational core that experiences impressions, fantasia, and from which emotions are derived according to Stoic thought. Thus, the Stoics advocate for a life led by reason, where the true nature of the soul is understood and its capacity for rational judgment is fully actualized, mitigating the influence of harmful passions and leading to a virtuous and contented existence. The Stoic conception of human motivation is deeply rooted in the notions of impulse or desire karma and its antithesis, aversion or rejection. At its core, Stoicism posits that in its natural state, impulse is directed towards things that are consistent with nature ataphatic, that is, those that promote the well-being and flourishing of the individual. Conversely, rejection embodies the instinct to avoid that which is contrary to nature apophatic, signaling a sophisticated understanding of ethical motivation grounded in the intrinsic alignment with the natural order. This ethical framework is not isolated. It echoes the broader philosophical tradition that places self-preservation and self-love at the foundation of moral reasoning. From the Stoic perspective, every creature is driven by an innate inclination to protect itself and its well-being, a principle that manifests from the very moment of birth. This primal instinct toward self-preservation extends to seeking conditions conducive to life and vitality, while eschewing those that pose harm or detriment. For humans, the journey from being mere animals to rational beings introduces a nuanced layer to what constitutes nature-aligned desires. Initially, the pursuit of health, strength, and other attributes that enhance physical existence defines one's natural inclinations. However, as reason develops, the scope of what is considered in accordance with nature broadens to include virtues of the mind such as wisdom, natural talent, diligence, and memory. These intellectual and moral virtues enrich the concept of living in harmony with nature, elevating the individual's pursuit of a good life beyond mere physical well-being. The inclusion of pleasure as a natural good raises a nuanced debate within Stoic ethics. While physical and mental strengths are readily acknowledged as congruent with nature, pleasure's status is more complex. The Stoics diverged from Hellenistic philosophies that positioned pleasure as the highest good. Instead, they viewed it as a byproduct of living virtuously rather than an end in itself. For the Stoics, the essence of living in accordance with nature lies not in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the cultivation of virtue, aligning one's desires and actions with the rational order of the world. Through this philosophical lens, Stoicism constructs a moral edifice that champions self-love not as narcissism, but as a rational and natural inclination towards self-care and ethical development. It underscores a comprehensive approach to well-being, advocating for a life that balances physical health, mental acuity, and moral integrity, all harmoniously integrated through the guiding principle of living in accordance with nature. Within the Stoic school, the role of pleasure in the good life was a topic of nuanced discussion. While some members considered the possibility of pleasure being a natural good, the prevailing consensus was that pleasure, though not inherently negative, should not be the primary pursuit of a rational being. This perspective posits that virtue, not the direct chase after pleasure, is the true source of happiness, joy, and other positive states. These states are seen as natural consequences of living virtuously, analogous to an animal thriving in its prime or a plant flourishing in full bloom. This analogy underscores the Stoic belief in a unifying principle across nature, manifesting more distinctly as one ascends from the vegetative to the rational level of existence. The progression from plant to animal to rational being illustrates an increasing complexity and capacity for choice. For Stoics, the introduction of reason to sensory impulses elevates humans above mere instinctual living. Reason becomes the master hand that shapes and directs impulses, aligning them with nature's rational order. Thus, virtue is not merely compatible with nature. It is the fullest expression of living in accordance with nature. The Stoics' integration of reason and emotion challenges the dichotomy often presented between rational deliberation and emotional drive. Seneca, addressing this integration, argues against viewing reason and emotion as parallel forces in action. Stoicism posits that passions are distortions, excessive impulses driven by incorrect judgments. Thus, the relationship between reason and emotion is not one of equality but of governance, with reason acting as the guiding principle for emotion. Plutarch, through Sippus's teachings, clarifies this Stoic position, presenting impulse and repulsion not as mere emotional reactions, but as manifestations of rational command and prohibition, respectively. This perspective asserts that rational impulses, those aligned with virtue and wisdom, are the highest expressions of human nature. Consequently, when Stoicism speaks of impulse in the context of a rational being, it refers not to unguided emotion, but this Stoic framework suggests a profound unity between reason and impulse, where rationality itself dictates appropriate action. In this view, emotions are not independent drivers but are informed and shaped by rational judgment. Therefore, the Stoic ideal is not the absence of impulse but its refinement through reason, ensuring that actions are not merely instinctual but are expressions of a well-ordered, virtuous life. This integration of reason and emotion, far from diminishing the role of either, elevates them to a harmonious partnership in the pursuit of a life aligned with nature's rational principles. The Stoic philosophy integrates a unique perspective on the natural world and the development of life, positing the existence of seminal reasons, rhonos permatikoi, as the intrinsic principles guiding the formation and intelligence of all living beings. This concept suggests that plants and animals possess an inherent logic or rationality, not in the sense of conscious thought, but as an innate directive that governs their growth, function, and tendencies. This idea diverges from certain contemporary views on evolution, which may emphasize the emergence of mind from matter. Instead, the Stoics envisioned a cosmos imbued with rational principles from its inception, indicating a form of teleological order where mind and matter coexist rather than a linear progression from one to the other. The Stoic classification of emotions into four primary categories: pleasure, happiness; pain, sadness; desire, hunger; and aversion, fear, or mirrors their categorization of virtues. This symmetry between emotions and virtues reflects a comprehensive understanding of human psychology, where emotions are seen as responses to perceived goods and evils. Pleasure and desire are linked to the pursuit or presence of perceived goods, while pain and fear are associated with the avoidance or presence of perceived evils. According to Stoic thought, these emotions, particularly when they become overwhelming or destructive, are viewed as furies that disrupt the tranquility of the wise. Stoicism contends that such emotional turmoil stems from false judgments and misguided beliefs about what is truly good or bad, rather than from the objective nature of external events. The philosophical endeavor, then, is to combat these emotional disturbances through the cultivation of virtue and the correct understanding of what should truly be valued or disdained. In addressing emotions, Stoics advocate for a rational detachment from passions, asserting that peace and tranquility are achievable not through the suppression of emotion, but through the correction of the misconceptions that give rise to them. This approach involves a nuanced analysis of emotions, categorizing various feelings under the four primary ones, and understanding their origins in incorrect value judgments. So, the Stoic strategy for achieving equanimity involves rigorous self-examination and the development of an ethical framework that aligns with a natural order and rational principles. By doing so, Stoicism offers a path to a life free from the tyranny of uncontrolled emotions, guided instead by wisdom and virtue. This philosophical journey towards inner peace and rational living encapsulates the Stoic response to the challenges of human existence, emphasizing the power of the mind to shape one's experience of the world. The Stoics embarked on a meticulous examination of language, viewing the etymology and semantics of words as crucial insights into their underlying meanings. This linguistic endeavor, though seemingly more aligned with the interests of lexicographers, was integral to Stoic philosophy. Their approach to grammar and language was unconstrained, allowing for a level of creativity and exploration that delved deeply into the nuances of meaning and expression. Such an approach underscores the Stoics' belief in the power of language to reflect and elucidate complex philosophical concepts. In their discourse on emotions, the Stoics distinguish between destructive passions that disturb the soul's tranquility and certain apatheia or serene states that a virtuous, wise individual might experience. These serene states were not erratic fluctuations in the soul's disposition, but were consistent with reason and integrated into the rational life. They were seen as natural and reasonable responses to the world, embodying the Stoic ideal of living in accordance with virtue and wisdom. A Stoic sage or ideal wise person was characterized by an unwavering state of contentment that transcended ordinary pleasure and pain. Such an individual could experience joy not as a fleeting pleasure, but as a profound satisfaction in the presence of true goodness. Similarly, while devoid of desire in its base form, the sage could possess wishes aligned purely with virtuous ends. And though immune to fear, the sage could exhibit caution, a rational and measured response to potential threats. This nuanced perspective delineates between the four primary emotions and introduces apatheia as rational counterparts to three of them: joy in place of pleasure, wish instead of desire, and caution rather than fear. Grief, however, stands alone without a positive counterpart because it arises from adverse circumstances, which the sage strives to transcend through virtue and rationality. The Stoics revered Socrates as an exemplar of their ideals, highlighting his legendary equanimity as evidence of a life lived in harmony with reason. Socrates' consistent demeanor, unaffected by the day's events, epitomized the Stoic aspiration towards a tranquil and undisturbed existence. In categorizing the elements of life, Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, identified three classifications: good, bad, and indifferent. Goods encompassed virtue and virtuous actions. Evils included vice and its manifestations, and indifference were neither inherently good nor bad. This tripartite scheme underpins the Stoic ethical framework, emphasizing the pursuit of virtue as the sole genuine good. Through their philosophical inquiries and linguistic analysis, the Stoics crafted a comprehensive system that sought to align human life with the rational order of the universe. To their exploration of emotions, reasoned responses, and the nature of goods and evils offers a profound vision of a life governed by wisdom, virtue, and the pursuit of the true good. The Stoics delineated a third category of things, which encompassed aspects of life that are generally considered significant yet were deemed indifferent in the context of achieving virtue and living a good life. This category included elements such as life and death, health and sickness, pleasure and pain, beauty and ugliness, strength and weakness, honor and shame, wealth and poverty, success and failure, and high birth and low birth. These were regarded as indifferent because their moral value was not intrinsic but contingent upon how they were utilized in the pursuit of virtue or vice. In Stoic philosophy, the concept of good was narrowly defined to encompass only what contributes to virtue. To benefit in the Stoic sense was to act in accordance with virtue. This definition underscores a fundamental Stoic principle. The essence of good lies not in external conditions or possessions, but in one's ethical disposition and actions. Health and wealth, for instance, could either be conducive or detrimental to one's moral well-being, depending on their use. Therefore, these and other indifferents were not considered inherently good or bad. This perspective is encapsulated in the Stoic equation of the e-good with the beautiful in Greek terms, or the right in our contemporary language, illustrating the unity of ethical goodness and moral correctness. According to Stoicism, what is genuinely good is also morally right, and this conflation of the good with the right forms the core of Stoic ethics. The implication of this view is profound. The only true good is virtuous living, and the only real evil is. The Stoics maintained that living in accordance with virtue, which encompasses understanding and acting upon what is genuinely good and right, suffices for a happy life. This philosophical stance posits that external conditions, while they may affect one's circumstances, do not determine one's happiness or moral worth. Instead, happiness is achieved through living a life of virtue, where ethical actions and choices align with the natural order and rational principles governing the universe. Through this lens, Stoicism offers a robust ethical framework that prioritizes moral integrity and rationality over the pursuit of external goods and pleasure. It advocates for a life where the pursuit of the right and the good is synonymous, guiding individuals toward inner tranquility and fulfillment regardless of external conditions. This Stoic ideal champions the resilience of the human spirit in the face of life's indifferences, emphasizing the power of virtue as the foundation of a meaningful and contented existence. On the contrary, the presence of wrongdoing stood as the sole detriment to human contentment, affecting individuals regardless of their awareness. The pursuit of virtue emerged as the quintessential aim, embodying a choice that transcended concerns about potential outcomes or fears. This pursuit, recognized as the paramount good, asserted that the addition of extraneous elements could not enhance its value. Rather, its potential for growth was tied solely to the duration of its existence. The measure of its worth was not quantifiable in abundance, but in its enduring quality across time. Virtue, in its essence, could not be amplified. Its value remained constant, irrespective of the duration of its manifestation. Similarly, the dimensions chosen to define a circle did not alter its fundamental nature or its perfection, even if it were to be swiftly erased from the very dust in which it was drawn. The essence of human goodness, as encapsulated in virtue, aligned with the principles of reason, positing virtue as the highest expression of reason. Humanity's distinction from other species was attributed to the faculty of reason. Thus, living in accordance with logic was deemed a natural pursuit. This confluence of divine and human law underscored the notion that an entity's nature was not determined by its current state, but by its intended evolution within the cosmic order. Consequently, the attainment of happiness was synonymous with virtuous living. To embody goodness was to exercise rationality. To adhere to rational principles was to follow the natural order, and to align with nature was inherently to comply with divine. The Stoic philosophy, as echoed by Zeno, posited that true contentment was achieved through harmonizing one's mind with the universal will, a state where the individual's desires and actions were in complete alignment with the cosmic purpose. This concept was further supported by Socrates and the Stoics, who regarded virtue as a form of knowledge, purified from the distortions of emotion and thus purely rational. They embraced Plato's four cardinal virtues, wisdom, temperance, courage, and justice, as fundamental areas of philosophical inquiry, each representing a path to ethical living. Conversely, folly, intemperance, cowardice, and injustice were identified as the primary vices, each antagonistic to the corresponding virtues. The Stoics developed an extensive taxonomy of characteristics associated with these virtues and vices, meticulously categorizing human behaviors and inclinations to foster a life in accordance with virtue. Through this philosophical lens, virtue not only constituted the core of ethical existence, but also provided a framework for understanding the human condition in its pursuit of harmony, rationality, and alignment with the natural and divine orders. The teachings of the Stoics articulated a profound understanding of virtue, positing that it was singular and indivisible. According to their philosophy, virtue was synonymous with reason, and it was this rationality that should preside over all facets of human behavior. This perspective echoed the broader tradition of Greek thought, which grappled with the paradox that possession of a single virtue inherently implied the possession of all virtues. Delving deeper into this notion, argued that exhibiting one virtue was tantamount to exhibiting them all, asserting that both the individual lacking in any virtue and the action devoid of comprehensive virtuousness were imperfect. The differentiation among virtues, he suggested, lay merely in the sequence of their application, with each virtue inherently encompassing the essence of the others. Wisdom, for instance, necessitated discernment of the correct course of action, which inherently required the integration of other virtues. Temperance aimed to regulate desires and impulses, but its true practice was called into question if one acted out of fear at lapse in courage. Greed an act of injustice, or impulsivity a form of folly. Courage, defined by the willingness to confront risks and challenges, was not genuine unless it was informed by wisdom, justice, and temperance. This interconnectedness underscored a critical Stoic belief. The loss of one virtue amounted to the forfeiture of all. This principle was starkly illustrated by the Stoics' counterintuitive stance on vice. Akin to the paradox of virtue, they posited that the presence of a single vice implied the presence of all vices, just as one might misplace a piece of Corinthian ware without diminishing the collection's overall integrity. The loss of a single virtue, they argued, compromised the totality of one's virtuous character. This holistic view of virtue and vice underlines the Stoic conviction that ethical conduct was not a matter of selectively adhering to certain moral qualities, but required a comprehensive and integrated approach to living a virtuous life. The Stoics emphasized that virtue, in its essence, was an all-or-nothing proposition, where the manifestation of one virtue necessitated the embodiment of all virtues, reflecting a deep interdependence and unity within the moral framework they advocate. Through this lens, the practice of virtue was seen as a dynamic and interconnected pursuit, where each virtue supported and was supported by the others, weaving a rich tapestry of moral excellence that governed the entirety of one's actions and character. The inaugural paradox of Stoicism, which finds its roots in the assertion that virtue is equivalent to pure reason, highlights a pivotal shift in philosophical thought introduced by Zeno. Cicero, in his discussions on Zeno's innovations, notes that while predecessors contended that virtues were the offspring of nature and habituation, Zeno elevated reason as the singular foundation upon which all virtues rest. This perspective not only reaffirmed the Platonic, or perhaps more accurately, the Socratic Platonic doctrine that virtue is teachable, but also emphasized the indispensable roles that innate disposition and habitual practice play in the cultivation of virtuous character. As we pivot from the discourse on good versus bad to the examination of Stoic attitudes towards things deemed indifferent, health, wealth, power, respect, Stoicism's rigid doctrine reveals a more nuanced approach. Despite the high value placed on these societal markers, Stoicism posits that their presence or absence bears no direct correlation to one's moral worth. This distinction underscores a pivotal Stoic teaching. While such externalities are neither inherently good nor evil, and thus not objects of moral choice, they are far from being morally neutral. Instead, they occupy a distinct category that distinguishes them from actions or choices directly linked to virtue or vice. However, within the realm of indifference, there exists a subset of truly neutral actions, such as the direction in which one extends a finger, the decision to pick up a straw, or the number of hairs on one's head. These actions are so inconsequential to the Stoic framework of virtue that they neither advance nor detract from one's moral development. Yet, it's crucial to recognize that such purely neutral instances are exceptional. For the most part, indifferents are characterized by their capacity to either align with or deviate from nature, thereby eliciting a natural inclination towards or aversion from them. This bifurcation within the category of indifference elucidates the Stoic view that while certain things may not intrinsically contribute to or detract from virtue, their alignment with or opposition to nature can influence our disposition toward. In this nuanced understanding, indiscriminate acquires a dual significance. It denotes things that are neither morally good nor bad, and also those that do not inherently attract or repel us. This delineation is vital for comprehending the Stoic interpretation of nature's role in guiding ethical behavior. Health, strength, and vitality are celebrated as congruent with nature, while sickness, weakness, and debilitation are viewed as contrary to it. Through this lens, Stoicism invites a deeper reflection on the nature of indifference, advocating for a discerning approach that recognizes the subtle ways in which external conditions and choices can reflect our alignment with or deviation from the natural order, and by extension, our pursuit of virtue. The Stoic philosophy provides a nuanced understanding of the interplay between the soul's imperfections, the body's frailties, and their relationship to nature. These aspects, while inherently part of nature, do not directly align with or oppose nature's course. They simply exist within its bounds. In Stoicism, the concept of value is intricately tied to the idea of alignment with nature. Consequently, anything that harmonizes with nature is deemed valuable, whereas that which deviates from nature is considered to have disvalue, especially when evaluated through the lens of pure value or intrinsic worth. Yet there exists a category of things that, while not directly influenced by nature, possess what Antipater termed selective value, or more critically, diselective disvalue. Selective value embodies the principle of preference in decision-making, prompting individuals to choose one option over another based on perceived benefit. Health over illness, wealth over poverty, or life over death, contingent upon the situation. This delineation births the terminology of takeable for those options deemed preferable and untable for their undesirable counterparts. Consequently, items of significant worth were labeled preferred, while those of lesser value were termed rejected, leaving a middle ground for entities that elicited neither attraction nor repulsion. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, introduced these classifications, suggesting that such distinctions could apply to matters traditionally considered inconsequential. His rationale was that preference, in its truest form, was reserved for distinctions within the royal court, among the king's officials rather than the king himself, highlighting the Stoic view that ultimate value resides beyond mere external preferences, mental, physical, and external to the individual. In the realm of the mind, virtues such as natural talent, artistic ability, and moral development are esteemed, while their opposites are disregarded. Regarding the body, life, health, strength, well-being, integrity, and beauty are preferred over death, sickness, weakness, poor condition, mutilation, and ugliness. External considerations, Those beyond the individual's direct control also fall under this evaluative scheme, though the text does not elaborate on these. The Stoic approach to value and disvalue, preference and aversion, underscores a sophisticated ethical system. It emphasizes a rational assessment of the world, encouraging choices that align with nature and enhance one's state of being, whether through cultivating virtues, maintaining physical health, or achieving external goals. This philosophy advocates for a balanced life, wherein decisions are guided by wisdom and an understanding of nature's inherent value system, thus steering individuals towards a life of virtue and fulfillment. The Stoic philosophy intricately navigates the valuation of externalities such as wealth, fame, and noble birth, juxtaposed against their lesser-valued counterparts like poverty, dishonorable conduct, and low social standing. Despite initially dismissing common and purchasable goods as inconsequential to the pursuit of virtue, Stoicism subtly reintroduces these external advantages through the back door, labeling them as indifference. This classification cleverly reconciles the Stoics' strict ethical framework with the unavoidable social realities and preferences of human life. Stoicism delineates a dualistic approach to morality, differentiating between the conduct expected of the wise, those who have attained a profound understanding of the Stoic principles, and the masses. While the performance of virtuous acts is accessible to all, true wisdom, and by extension the correct practice of these virtues, is reserved for the sage. This distinction is encapsulated in the concept of proprieties. In essence, while anyone can perform an act of virtue, such as honoring one's parents, only the sage accomplishes this with the full depth of wisdom, understanding the act as part of the broader art of living virtuously. This elevates the sage's actions to a level of perfect propriety or rightness, in contrast to the intermediate propriety or sin characterizing the actions of others. The term as propriety thus evolves to encompass a range of meanings, from the ideal conduct of the wise to the more mundane actions of everyday life that fall short of this ideal, but still maintain a semblance of virtue. Over time, propriety has come to predominantly denote these middle ground actions, such as marriage, participating in diplomacy, or engaging in philosophical debate, which, while not exemplifying the highest virtue, are necessary for societal function and personal development. The Stoic use of the term audiutes to translate the concept of propriety highlights the challenges of encapsulating Stoic ethics within the constraints of language, suggesting that every interpretation is, to some degree, an imperfect compromise. This broad application of duty extends beyond human behavior to the natural instincts of animals and the growth patterns of plants, suggesting a universal principle of action in accordance with one's nature. However, the application of duty to non-human entities is metaphorical, aiming to illustrate the inherent tendency of all beings to act in alignment with their nature, rather than attributing moral responsibility to them. Albeit at vastly different levels of complexity and consciousness. In this perspective underscores the Stoic belief in a rational order to the universe, in which every entity plays its part according to its nature, contributing to the cosmic balance. Through this lens, Stoicism invites a deeper contemplation of morality, duty, and the art of living, advocating for a life that harmonizes personal actions with the universal principles of reason and virtue. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, was the first to employ the term in question, which he used to articulate the essence of living in accordance with one's nature. For Zeno, the concept of a's becoming serves as the most fitting translation of this term, encapsulating the notion that the appropriateness of life or death decisions is contingent upon the natural order and circumstances, rather than being inherently good or. This perspective aligns with the poet-philosopher Cleanthes' metaphor, suggesting that nature initiates an iambic line, leaving humanity the task of completion. Until this task is fulfilled, individuals must bear the metaphorical fool's cap, signifying the human condition of striving towards completion within the natural order. Seneca, drawing from this Stoic foundation, likens the wise person to a master artisan and the sage to an individual in perfect health, contrasting them with the proficient or progressing student, who is akin to someone recovering from a grave illness. For the proficient, the cessation of symptoms is equated to health, yet they remain perpetually vulnerable to relapse. In this analogy, philosophy's role is identified as nurturing these weaker minds towards resilience and understanding, distinguishing the smart persons from the conventional fool. Despite the external perception of foolishness, the wise or proficient individual is recognized for their distinct journey towards wisdom. The Stoic framework further identifies three categories of proficiency, reminiscent of certain Calvinist doctrines regarding predestination and salvation. The first category includes those nearing wisdom but not yet having crossed the threshold, metaphorically standing outside the door to heaven. Some interpretations suggest that individuals in this category, similar to the sage, cannot regress because they are on the path to enlightenment but have not yet recognized their arrival. Contrary to this, other scholars argue that while these individuals are shielded from enduring diseases of the soul, they remain susceptible to ephemeral surges of passion, indicating that their spiritual and moral immunity is not absolute. This nuanced classification reveals a Stoic acknowledgement of the complex journey towards wisdom, where the proficient are in a continuous process of healing and growth, vulnerable yet distinct from those who have ceased their pursuit of virtue. The distinction between permanent moral fortitude and temporary lapses underscores the Stoic commitment to self-improvement and the vigilant cultivation of virtue, emphasizing the dynamic and ongoing nature of ethical development. Our second group within the Stoic classification of proficiency encompasses individuals grappling with persistent mental challenges or passions. These are persons who may have overcome one form of mental affliction, such as lust, but remain ensnared by others, like desire, or who accept the notion of death, but cannot reconcile with the fear of pain. This categorization highlights the nuanced Stoic understanding of human psychology, acknowledging that progress toward virtue is often non-linear and fraught with personal battles that vary significantly from one individual to another. The appeal of Stoicism, for many, lies in its inherent contradictions and paradoxes. For instance, the notion that obscurity might serve a poet better than skill reflects the paradoxical nature of Stoic teachings. Similarly, the transformation of the statement virtue is the highest good to virtue is the only good illustrates a fundamental Stoic paradox, challenging conventional beliefs about the nature of good and happiness. Paradoxes extend to various Stoic doctrines. The assertion that virtue alone suffices for happiness confronts traditional views on the sources of human contentment. Cicero, in his Tusculan Disputations, debates the Stoic claim by questioning the happiness of a virtuous man under physical duress, thereby engaging with the Stoic paradox of equating all faults. The Stoics posited a binary moral landscape where actions are either correct or incorrect, akin to the binary nature of geometric figures, leaving no room for moral ambiguity or gradations of virtue or vice. This binary perspective extends to the Stoic views on freedom, wisdom, and happiness. In their eyes, only the sage, free from the distortions of irrational passions, is truly free, rich, and content, while all others, ensnared by folly, are deemed enslaved and miserable, regardless of their material or social standing. This dichotomy underscores the Stoic belief in the equality of all goods and the non-existence of degrees in wisdom and happiness. Just as the individual near Canopus is as much not in Canopus as one far away, and an 8-day-old puppy is as blind as on its birth, the Stoics argue that one is either wise and happy or not. There are no intermediate states. This stringent classification and the subsequent paradoxes it generates have been points of contention and intrigue throughout the history of Stoic philosophy. Critics and followers alike have wrestled with these ideas, debating their practical implications and their congruence with the human experience. Despite or perhaps because of these paradoxes, Stoicism continues to provoke thought and discussion, challenging individuals to contemplate the essence of virtue, the nature of happiness, and the path to a fulfilled life. In ancient Greece, the articulation of contradictions was not only common but also a method of philosophical exploration, with the Stoics emerging as adept practitioners of this tradition. Their ability to embrace and rationalize apparent paradoxes set them apart, fostering deep reflections on the nature of wisdom, happiness, and virtue. The Stoics, alongside figures like Epicurus and Socrates, contributed significantly to the dialogue on the resilience and contentment of the wise person under adverse conditions. Epicurus, for instance, posited that a wise person could find delight even in extreme suffering, such as being placed in the bull of Phalaris, a notorious ancient torture device. This assertion echoes the Stoic belief in the indomitable spirit of the sage. Socrates, often hailed as the progenitor of paradoxical wisdom, famously maintained his composure and integrity in the face of death, illustrating the Stoic ideal that external circumstances cannot diminish the true value of a virtuous life. This philosophical lineage suggests that true wisdom entails recognizing the triviality of earthly tribulations in the grand scheme of moral and cosmic order. The Stoics endeavored to delineate a stark dichotomy between good and evil, a conceptual separation that proved challenging in practice. The realization that, by their stringent standards, most individuals fell short of the ideal, resembling the goats is to be separated from the sheep on the day of judgment, highlighted the aspirational nature of Stoic ethics. The sage, or the ideal Stoic wise person, was variously termed the serious man, drawing from peripatetic Acetylaian terminology, or the urbane man, reflecting a cosmopolitan ideal of wisdom and virtue. This linguistic evolution from the specific civic identities of city-states like Athens or Sparta to a more universal conception of a rational societal order underscores the Stoic vision of a global community bound by reason and virtue. In this envisioned Stoic society, only the wise are truly free, transcending the limitations and injustices of earthly states through adherence to universal laws of reason and virtue. The term aborigines, used to denote fools or those ignorant of the state's laws, captures the Stoic critique of conventional societal values and norms, by redefining the state as the community of all rational beings. The Stoics elevated the discussion from the political to the ethical and spiritual domain, where wisdom alone liberates and folly invariably enslaves. Thus, the Stoic legacy is one of challenging and transcending conventional understandings of happiness, freedom, and virtue, advocating for a life governed by reason, resilience, and ethical clarity. Their paradoxes, far from mere rhetorical devices, invite profound contemplation on the essence of a good life and the universal pursuit of wisdom. In the Stoic worldview, the fool was perceived not merely as misguided, but as fundamentally disconnected from the universal principles that govern ethical and rational life. This disconnection rendered the fool an outsider or alien in the grand scheme of Stoic cosmopolitanism, which spiritualized both law and the state beyond the confines of any specific societal norms. For the Stoics, law represented the embodiment of timeless reason, a universal mandate that prescribed ethical behavior and prohibited misconduct, aligning perfectly with the sage's intrinsic motivations and impulses. This conception of law as right reason elevates the Stoic sage to a paradigm of citizenship, inherently aligned with the laws of nature and the cosmos, and thus, by extension, a model social being. The Stoic ideal of unanimity among the wise stems from a shared recognition of the common good, rooted in uniform perspectives on life and virtue. In contrast, the fool with opposing life views stands in enmity to this commonality, isolated by their discordance with universal reason. The wise person's engagement in public life, therefore, is dictated not by ambition, but by the opportunity to contribute to the polis in alignment with Stoic principles. This engagement is contingent upon the compatibility of political involvement with the welfare of the state and the individual's personal safety. Stoicism advocates for a balanced form of governance that incorporates democratic, noble, and monarchical elements, reflecting the philosophical ideal that wise individuals should lead and legislate when conditions permit. In such a society, the wise person's roles extend beyond the political realm to encompass personal obligations such as marriage and procreation, undertaken for the benefit of both self and society. This vision anticipates a utopian future akin to the communal societies described by Zeno and Plato, where personal relationships and familial bonds are transformed in the service of communal harmony and the elimination of jealousy. The sage's proficiency in navigating social and political spheres, coupled with an aptitude for the finer aspects of life, underscores the Stoic ideal of the well-rounded individual. Politeness, friendliness, and the art of conversation are tools for the sage to foster goodwill and friendship, embodying the principle of being all things to all men. This versatility enables the sage to engage effectively with diverse audiences, demonstrating wisdom not only through philosophical discourse but also through practical, everyday interactions. In summary, the Stoic philosophy constructs a comprehensive blueprint for living that integrates ethical conduct, social responsibility, and personal development. It envisions a society governed by the wise, who, through their adherence to universal reason and their engagement in communal life, exemplify the highest ideals of virtue, wisdom, and social harmony. Stoic sage's capacity for self-sufficiency represents a notably paradoxical aspect of his character, often interpreted as antisocial. One of the most lauded attributes of the sage is his profound ability to remain unaffected by The Stoic ideal encapsulates a scenario where the sage can emerge from a devastating scenario, such as a city engulfed in flames, losing all possessions, friends, and family, and still maintain a serene disposition, declaring he's lost nothing of real value. This level of detachment stems from a belief that true contentment and fortune are internal states, unaffected by external vicissitudes. A key characteristic of the sage is apatheia, or freedom from passions, which Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, regarded not as natural states but as diseases of the soul. According to Stoic philosophy, the sage, as the embodiment of human perfection, would naturally be devoid of such disturbances, maintaining an even flow of bliss undisturbed by external events or emotional turmoil. This impassivity extends to interpersonal relations. The sage is envisioned as being unmoved by favoritism, unpersuaded by pleas, immune to pity, and untouched by anger. This is not to say that the sage is incapable of recognizing the suffering of others. Rather, his actions and reactions are governed by rational assessment over emotional impulse. The Stoic stance on pity and mercy presents a complex facet of their ethical system. While the sage is portrayed as lacking pity in the emotional sense, Stoic teachings, as noted by Epictetus, encourage the display of grief or sympathy as a form of social concord, albeit without succumbing to the emotional turmoil that typically accompanies such feelings. This nuanced approach aims to balance the sage's rational detachment with the expectations of social behavior, advocating for a compassionate demeanor that does not compromise one's inner tranquility. The sage's immunity to anger is predicated on the understanding that anger arises from witnessing ignorance or folly in others, which, from a Stoic perspective, does not warrant disturbance to one's peace of mind. Recognizing that those who act foolishly harm themselves through their ignorance, the sage remains dispassionate, viewing such actions through the lens of understanding and forgiveness rather than retribution. The apatheia of the sage, then, is not a lack of concern for others, but a testament to the Stoic belief in the supremacy of reason over emotion. This philosophical ideal champions a state of serenity and rationality, where the sage navigates the complexities of life and human interactions with equanimity and wisdom, embodying the Stoic vision of virtue and happiness as internal achievements, impervious to the fluctuations of fortune and the external world. The Stoic sage, embodying the pinnacle of philosophical virtue, was conceptualized as being impervious to wonder. This trait meant that no natural phenomenon, regardless of its rarity or perceived miraculousness, could elicit astonishment in him, be it the enigmatic Mephitic caverns, believed to be the gates to the underworld, the mysterious ebbing and flowing tides that fascinated those living by the Mediterranean, the naturally occurring hot springs, or the awe-inspiring geysers of fire. The sage remained unmoved. His disposition stemmed from a profound understanding of nature and a lack of passion, which, in Stoic philosophy, led naturally to the absence of error. This transition to the notion of the sage's infallibility marks a significant departure from previous philosophical doctrines introduced by Zeno and unparalleled in its audacity within the annals of classical schools of thought. The Stoic sage, it was argued, did not hold opinions in the conventional sense, never regretted his actions, and was incapable of deception. This belief system starkly contrasts with Plato's model, which acknowledged a realm of opinion situated between the certainties of knowledge and ignorance. A twilight zone of human cognition where conjecture, doubt, and partial understanding commonly reside. However, for the Stoic sage, such ambiguities and half-truths were non-existent. His mental state was likened to perpetual daylight, devoid of the dawn or dusk of uncertainty. Charles Lamb's description of a man whose understanding is always at its meridian aptly captures the Stoic ideal. The sage lacked the capacity for doubt, speculation, or error, embodying a form of cognitive perfection where the possibility of misjudgment or misinterpretation was absent. In this philosophical construct, the process of conjecturing or revising one's stance was seen as indicative of initial error or incomplete understanding, both of which were alien to the sage's experience. The Stoic sage's immunity to error extended even to his sensory perceptions and judgments, ensuring that he never strayed from truth in any domain of his life. This infallibility also precluded the possibility of drunkenness, with Zeno highlighting that such a state would lead to uncontrolled speech, anathema to the sage's disciplined existence. Yet, this did not mean a complete abstention from social gatherings. Stoicism recognized the virtue of conviviality, suggesting that the sage could partake in communal celebrations, albeit in a manner that maintained his philosophical integrity. The Stoic portrayal of the sage as a figure of unwavering rationality, immune to the vicissitudes of human emotion and error, represents an idealized vision of human potential. This model underscores the Stoic belief in the possibility of achieving a state of complete virtue and wisdom through rigorous self-discipline and a profound understanding of the natural world, setting a lofty benchmark for philosophical aspiration. So the Stoic sage, in his embodiment of philosophical ideals, navigated life with a composure that extended even into the realm of social gatherings, demonstrating a balance between engagement and restraint. The anecdote of Sippus illustrates this balance perfectly, portraying a man whose demeanor remained serene and composed despite the physical effects of alcohol suggesting otherwise. This narrative underscores the Stoic value of moderation, where even in the midst of indulgence, the sage's inner tranquility and rational control are unshaken. Humor and critical reflection on the concept of infallibility also found a place within Stoic discourse, as evidenced by the playful challenge posed by Pus to Aristo of Chios. By exploiting the indistinguishable appearance of twin brothers to deceive Aristo, plus illuminated the practical challenges of maintaining the Stoic ideal of never being deceived. The outcome of this jest not only highlighted the fallibility of Aristo, but also served as a tacit acknowledgement among Stoics of the daunting, perhaps unreachable, standards set for the sage. This recognition did not detract from the aspirational nature of Stoicism, but rather humanized its proponents, acknowledging their awareness of their own limitations and the Herculean task of living up to the sage's ideal. Central to the Stoic portrayal of the sage is the principle of innocence or harmlessness, epitomizing the ethical cornerstone of Stoicism. This principle asserts that the sage, in his pursuit of virtue, neither inflicts nor suffers harm. Drawing from Socratic thought, the Stoics held that divine law shields the morally superior from being diminished by the morally inferior. The invulnerability of the sage to external harm reflects a broader Stoic doctrine that true damage can only arise from within, through one's own volition. This concept reinforces the Stoic belief in the autonomy of the moral self, impervious to external vicissitudes. The metaphor of the sage being akin to sunlight in our world, yet not of it, beautifully encapsulates the Stoic vision of transcendence. The sage, in his philosophical purity and commitment to virtue, operates on a plane of existence that is both within and above the mundane realities of human life. His immunity to evil, rooted in the unassailable fortress of his will, highlights the Stoic conviction that moral integrity and virtue are the ultimate safeguards against the trials and tribulations of existence. Through these narratives and principles, Stoicism presents a rigorous yet inspiring vision of human potential, advocating for a life led in harmony with reason, virtue, and the natural order. The sage stands as a beacon of philosophical excellence, guiding adherents toward the lofty aim of ethical perfection and inner peace. In the Stoic conception of virtue and wisdom, the sage exists in a realm of moral invulnerability, impervious not only to harm but also to insult. The Stoic sage, adorned in what can be described as mild majesty, stands beyond the reach of disgrace, no matter the insolence directed towards him. This resilience against insult underscores the Stoic belief in the self-sufficiency of virtue and the inherent dignity of the wise. Insults, from this perspective, reflect solely on the character of the insulter, unable to tarnish the sage's virtue. The Stoic philosophy also entertains the notion of sudden transformation or conversion from folly to wisdom, echoing the idea of final assurance and paralleling the concept of sudden enlightenment found in various spiritual traditions. This abrupt passage from vice to virtue, from ignorance to enlightenment, aligns with the Stoic principle of a binary moral universe where no intermediary state exists between folly and wisdom. Despite the skepticism this idea attracted, suggesting it was more akin to fantastical tales than serious philosophy, it signifies the Stoic commitment to the transformative potential of human nature. Transitioning from the ethical to the cosmological, Stoicism presents a dualistic view of the universe through its physic, where two primary principles govern all existence: the active and the passive. The passive principle, matter, is conceived as a formless substrate, devoid of qualities and inert. In contrast, the active principle, identified as the logos or divine reason, represents the rational and animating force that permeates and shapes this divine reason, or God, is the sole causal agent in the Stoic universe, with matter serving merely as the canvas upon which the logos inscribes the forms and qualities of the world. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, laid down this doctrine, which was subsequently echoed by his followers, establishing a framework where the cosmos is seen as a rational, ordered, and interconnected whole. The Stoic universe is thus a manifestation of divine rationality, with everything from the smallest particle to the grandest celestial body imbued with a portion of the divine logos. This cosmological vision reinforces the Stoic belief in living in accordance with nature and reason, as to live virtuously is to align oneself with the fundamental principles that govern the cosmos. In summary, Stoicism offers a comprehensive philosophical system that spans ethical self-sufficiency, the potential for sudden moral transformation, and a rational, divinely ordered universe. On the sage, as the ideal exponent of Stoic virtue, embodies the pinnacle of human potential, living in harmony with the universal reason that orchestrates the world. The Stoics' concept of matter, termed as prime matter or unqualified being, is intriguing for its eternal nature and its capacity for change without experiencing increase or decrease. This notion posits matter as the foundational substance of all existent entities, embodying a dualistic view where matter serves as the passive principle in the cosmos. The term of matter itself, much like in contemporary discourse, was employed by the Stoics with a degree of ambiguity. At times, it referred to tangible objects possessing shape and other distinct qualities, and at other times to an abstract concept of matter devoid of any qualities, highlighting the complexity of Stoic metaphysics. Both foundational principles of Stoicism, the active and the passive, are envisioned as corporeal, albeit without form, coexisting in a state of mutual penetration. The characterization of the passive principle, or matter, as a body aligns with common linguistic usage, despite the conceptual challenges it presents. However, the notion of the active principle, or God as a body, necessitates a more nuanced understanding, particularly given the Stoic identification of God with spirit, a term originally connoting air in motion. This leads to the Stoic analogy between the active principle and ether, an ancient concept referring to a clear sky or the upper air, perceived as the purest form of air or a divine substance pervading the universe. Ether, in its dynamism, was likened to spirit, not merely in the sense of air and motion, but as a metaphor for the divine essence that animates and organizes the cosmos. Sippus's definition of the divine as a spirit moving itself into and out of itself, or spirit moving itself to and from, offers a vivid depiction of the active principle's dynamic nature. This conceptualization of God as ether in motion reflects the Stoic effort to reconcile the corporeal aspect of their cosmology with the transcendent animating force of the universe. Through such metaphysical explorations, the Stoics crafted a framework where the divine and the material are not disparate entities, but intertwined aspects of a single, coherent reality. This perspective underscores the Stoic belief in a cosmos imbued with rationality and order, governed by divine providence manifested through the eternal dance of matter and spirit. The Stoic cosmology, deeply rooted in classical thought, posits two foundational principles, the ungenerated and indestructible active and passive principles, alongside the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. These elements, while considered ultimate from a human perspective, are viewed as creations of the divine within Stoic philosophy. They are entities brought into existence at the cosmos' inception and are destined to be reabsorbed into the divine essence, signifying a cyclical view of cosmic evolution and dissolution, distinct from the eternal principles of active as, often associated with divine reason, or logos, and passive primordial matter. That underpin the cosmos, the four elements serve as the basic building blocks of the material world. Unlike the abstract first principles, the elements possess both shape and extension, making them tangible constituents of the physical universe. Each element is defined by its role as both the origin and the final dissolution point of all composite bodies within the cosmos, underscoring a fundamental Stoic belief in the transitory nature of physical forms. In Stoic thought, the terms earth, air, fire, and water are to be understood in expansive terms, each representing a broad category of phenomena rather than merely physical substances. For instance, earth encompasses all earthly or solid materials, including bones and sinews in living organisms, whereas air refers to all gaseous substances. The presence of fire, air, water, and earth in all compound natures is indicated through the qualities of hot, cold, wet, and dry, respectively. This framework suggests a cosmology where the four elements, through their interactions and combinations, give rise to the diversity of forms and natures observed in the material world, including living beings. Chrysippus's assertion that the moon is composed solely of fire and air reflects the Stoic inclination to attribute celestial bodies to lighter elements, indicative of ancient theories regarding the composition and nature of heavenly objects. The distinction between light elements in fire and air and heavy elements, water and earth, introduces a further layer of complexity, aligning with the Stoic and pre-Socratic understanding of motion and rest in the physical world. Lightness and heaviness are not merely physical attributes, but are imbued with cosmological significance, denoting the inherent tendencies of elements to move towards or away from the Earth's center, symbolizing a dynamic universe in constant flux. The singularity of fire, attributed to its unique properties and its role as a transformative agent, underscores the nuanced Stoic classification of the elements. Saturnian misclassification not only reflects the material composition of the universe, but also mirrors the broader Stoic principles of active and passive forces, illustrating the interconnectedness and unity underlying Stoic cosmology. Through such a comprehensive and integrated view of the cosmos, Stoicism offers a vision of the world that is both materially diverse and fundamentally unified, governed by the rational principles of divine reason and the primordial substrate of matter. The Stoic and pre-Socratic conceptualizations of fire and the elements offer a rich tapestry of ancient cosmological and metaphysical thought, elegantly blending observations of the natural world with speculative philosophy. Building upon the insights of Heraclitus, distinguishes between two forms of fire, the destructive and the constructive or artistic. This bifurcation reflects a deeper understanding of the dual nature of fire, transcending its immediate association with destruction to acknowledge its role in creation and sustenance. So the constructive fire, or ether, is particularly noteworthy for its encompassing significance in the Stoic worldview. Ether, as conceived by the Stoics, constitutes the heavenly bodies, imbues animals with soul, and animates the life of. This ethereal fire represents the divine aspect of fire, embodying the creative and organizing principle that permeates the cosmos. Chrysippus's reference to Heraclitus underscores the dynamic process of transformation among the elements, where condensation and rarefaction facilitate the cyclical metamorphosis of fire into air, air into water, and so forth, suggesting a universe in perpetual flux. The medieval theory that posits four states of matter: solid, liquid, gaseous, and a mysterious fourth state beyond gas, mirrors ancient intuitions about the elemental transformations and their relationship to the divine or spiritual realm. This fourth state, akin to the Stoic concept of ether, hints at the intersection of material and spiritual existence, where matter approaches the immaterial or divine. In the Stoic cosmology, each element occupies a specific hierarchical position within the universe, reflecting an ordered and gradated structure. At the summit resides ethereal fire, divided into spheres for the fixed stars and the planets, embodying the celestial domain. Beneath this celestial realm lies the sphere of air, followed by the sphere of water, and finally, at the foundation of the cosmic structure, the sphere of earth. This geocentric model encapsulates the ancient understanding of the cosmos, where the Earth serves as the central and most stable element, supporting the layered spheres of water, air, and fire above it. through this layered depiction of the cosmos, ancient philosophers like Zeno and Heraclitus, alongside later interpretations and expansions, weave a complex vision of the universe. This vision harmonizes the observable phenomena of the natural world with profound metaphysical principles, framing the cosmos as a living, dynamic entity governed by rational and divine forces. The Stoic emphasis on the creative and sustaining power of ether or constructive fire underscores their belief in a cosmos infused with reason and purpose, where even the most elusive phenomena are integrated into a coherent and meaningful whole. The Stoic conception of the universe as a plenum, or a complete and ordered whole, is a fascinating aspect of their cosmology, reflecting a nuanced understanding of space, existence, and the nature of the cosmos. This notion posits that within the cosmos there is no emptiness or void. Every part of the terrestrial and celestial spheres is fully occupied by matter, creating a densely packed universe where the celestial, the heavens, presses down upon the terrestrial, or ensuring no space within the cosmos is left void. However, the Stoics also entertained the concept of an infinite void existing outside the plenum. This void, limitless and without any definable characteristics such as beginning, middle, or end, represents the absence of being, as being was understood to be synonymous with bodily existence. This aspect of Stoic thought introduces a distinction between the cosmos, a finite and ordered entity, and the infinite void, a realm devoid of any physical or tangible presence. The differentiation between the all and the whole further illustrates this point. The all encompasses both the cosmos and the void, indicating the totality of existence, including the non-existence of the void. In contrast, the whole refers exclusively to the cosmos, the finite universe filled with matter and life. This distinction, perhaps refined by later Stoics, reflects a sophisticated attempt to reconcile the observable, finite universe with the philosophical notion of an infinite void. When discussing concepts such as void, place, and space, the Stoics provided clear definitions to distinguish these ideas. The void was seen as the complete absence of body, place, the specific location occupied by a body, and space, a concept referring to areas both occupied and unoccupied by body. Given the Stoic assertion that the universe was fully occupied by matter, space in this context seems to refer to the conceptual all, the combination of the cosmos and the surrounding. The Stoic universe, therefore, is envisioned as an island of being amidst an ocean of void, a singular, filled existence floating in a boundless emptiness. This cosmological model starkly contrasts with the views of other ancient philosophers like Democritus or the Epicureans, who speculated on the existence of multiple worlds within the infinite void. For the Stoics, the spectacle of the starry heavens represented the entirety of being, beyond which lay nothingness, a perspective that underscores their focus on the observable universe and the rational order governing its existence. Through their cosmology, the Stoics articulated a worldview that married the grandeur of the physical universe with philosophical inquiries into the nature of existence, space, and non-being, offering a compelling vision of a cosmos characterized by order, reason, and a profound unity of all matter. The Stoics posited a cosmology where the universe is perceived as a singular, cohesive entity embodying the form of a sphere, a shape revered for its perfection and suitability for encapsulating the entirety of the cosmos. So this spherical universe, according to Stoic philosophy, is static as a whole, with Earth positioned at its center, serving as a stationary anchor around which celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and planets, revolve in concentric orbits. The outermost sphere, home to the fixed stars, rotates with prodigious velocity, creating a dynamic celestial ballad visible from the Earth's surface. Central to this model is the principle of universal gravitation towards the center, which posits that all cosmic matter naturally moves towards a central point, thus maintaining the Earth's central and unmoving position due to the equilibrium of forces exerted upon it from all directions. This concept also extends to the stability of the universe within the infinite void. The equal distribution of pressure ensures that the cosmos remains at rest. Zeno's assertion that the universe, within this infinite void, lacks weight and is indifferent to motion or stasis, reflects an early attempt to grapple with the nature of space and the physical laws governing the cosmos. The Stoics envisioned the universe not merely as an aggregation of matter, but as a perfect entity, an end in itself, distinguished from all other beings or objects which are seen as components of this greater whole. The exception to this perspective is humanity, endowed with a capacity for reason and contemplation, whose purpose is to reflect upon the universe and emulate its order and rationality. This cosmological framework underscores the Stoic belief in a harmonious and ordered universe, governed by a unifying principle or divine reason. Like the Stoics argued that the inherent beauty and order of the cosmos could not exist without the presence of a guiding intelligence or mind, suggesting a teleological view where the cosmos is imbued with purpose and direction. Through this lens, the Stoic universe is not just a physical space but a moral and spiritual entity, reflecting the principles of Stoic philosophy itself. Humanity's role within this cosmos is to recognize its place as part of the larger whole, striving to live in accordance with the rational order that pervades the universe. In doing so, humans can achieve a life of virtue and wisdom, mirroring the perfection and stability of the cosmos. The Stoic concept of the universe imbued with intelligence parallels the intricate relationship between the soul and the body in humans, offering a profound view of cosmic vitality and purpose. Just as the human soul permeates the body, animating and unifying its various functions, the Stoics envisioned the world soul as a pervasive force of reason and life throughout the cosmos. However, this divine intelligence, or world soul, does not manifest uniformly across all entities. It differentiates itself according to the nature and capacity of beings within the universe, reflecting a hierarchical organization of life and matter. In the Stoic framework, the manifestation of the world soul varies across the spectrum of existence. In rational beings, it appears as intellect; in lower animals as the animating soul; in plants as the principle of growth or nature; and in inorganic matter as the force of cohesion. So this gradation of the world soul's presence underpins the Stoic understanding of the cosmos as a living, rational entity where every level of existence, from the most rudimentary to the most complex, is imbued with a portion of the divine essence. The Stoics did not attribute soul in the strictest sense to plants, but rather understood them as driven by a principle of nature or growth. This principle, conceived as a constructive fire or a fiery spirit endowed with artistic skill, is as an artist, fashioning the material world through a process that mirrors the creative acts of human artistry. Nature, in its broadest sense, was synonymous with providence or the organizing principle of the cosmos, ensuring harmony and order within the universe. This construct of nature as a force above mere physical cohesion, yet below the animating soul of living beings, offers a nuanced perspective on the Stoic view of life. Nature, described as a cohesive force subject to self-initiated change, operates according to seminal reasons, logoi spermatikoi, which are the blueprints or rational principles inherent in all things, guiding their development and ensuring the continuity of characteristics from one generation to the next. Sippos' explanation of cohesion as the work of hairs elucidates the Stoic attempt to concretize the forces holding the universe together. This analogy highlights the Stoics' effort to provide tangible explanations for abstract concepts like cohesion. attributing the qualities of hardness, thickness, and color in materials to the underlying action of these hairs. The notion that colors, too, originate from air, as suggested by Zeno, further exemplifies the Stoic endeavor to understand and explain the physical world through the principles of their philosophy. In summary, the Stoic universe is a complex, interconnected web of intelligence and matter, where every element, from the stars in the heavens to the soil of the earth, participates in the divine order. The world soul, operating through various manifestations across the spectrum of existence, orchestrates the cosmos with artistic precision, embodying the Stoic ideals of rationality, purpose, and unity. The initial conceptualization of material existence posited that the inherent qualities of matter were merely the result of vibrations and compressions of air, sculpting the inert substance beneath into form and structure. This notion extended metaphorically to the dualistic nature of existence itself. In one dimension, an individual is epitomized by the soul, in another by the corporeal form. And yet, in a more profound synthesis, they are perceived as an inseparable unit. This dialectical understanding was mirrored in the cosmological perspective of the universe, where one interpretation identified the divine as its essence, another perceived the celestial configurations as its structure, and a third envisioned a harmonious amalgamation of both. Consequently, the cosmos was perceived not merely as a creation separate from the divine, but as an embodiment of God himself, a singular entity composed of all existences, immutable and uncreated. To this entity, through a cyclical process of absorption and recreation, established the order of the universe, periodically reintegrating all existences within itself, only to emanate them anew from its essence. Thus, the external cosmos was foredoomed to a cataclysmic demise through conflagration, a concept that has seeped into the collective consciousness, persisting as a ubiquitous belief. This apocalyptic vision posits that the world's end is precipitated by the cosmic soul, expanding beyond the capacity of its physical vessel, ultimately engulfing it in a total consumption. In this eschatological conflagration, all materiality is subsumed back into the primordial ether, leaving behind a realm of pure essence, a world suffused with soul, vivified throughout, as this reconstituted essence is inherently more diffuse and less concentrated than its predecessor. It necessitates a larger expanse, prompting the universe to experience cosmological rebirth from the ashes of its fiery dissolution. Heralds a new epoch characterized by a more ethereal, soul-infused existence, marking a transcendent phase in the perpetual cycle of cosmic rebirth. This enduring mythos, intertwining the fate of the cosmos with the metaphysical journey of the soul, encapsulates a profound reflection on the nature of existence, renewal, and the eternal interplay between the material and the spiritual realms. In the philosophical musings of antiquity, the concept of the void or the infinite was posited as the terminal boundary where the universe would culminate in an explosive dissolution. This notion underscores a profound connection with the idea that the cosmos, having contracted from a state of spiritual purity, is destined to revert to this primordial condition. This cyclical view bears a striking resemblance to contemporary scientific theories, such as the hypothesis that our solar system originated from a solar nebula and is fated to return to a nebulous state. Reflections of early thinkers on this subject offer fascinating parallels to modern perspectives. For instance, Sen contemplated the theory that celestial bodies hasten their own demise by spiraling into the sun, much like moths drawn fatally. However, Kleins perceived this not merely as a mechanical inevitability, but as a deliberate act of cosmic self-sacrifice, where the heavenly bodies, deified in his view, choose their own end for the sake of a higher existence. This narrative imbued the celestial gods with mortality, suggesting that, apart from Zeus, all gods were destined to perish in the grand conflagration of existence. These gods, akin to beings of wax or tin, would inevitably melt away in the great inferno, leaving Zeus to contemplate the aftermath. The Stoics, interpreting this cosmic cycle, envisioned Zeus not simply as a deity but as a symbol of providence, the rational and guiding principle of the cosmos. Thus, when they spoke of Zeus, they referred to this divine intellect intertwined with the universe, which, akin to a body, was inseparable from the divine mind. In this unity, the cosmos and Zeus would coalesce into a singular ethereal existence, poised for a future reconstitution. This cosmic cycle, marked by periods of generation, dissolution, and regeneration, mirrors the Stoic belief in the potential for renewal and improvement within the cosmic order. Despite the seemingly grim prospect of an inevitable end, the Stoics harbored an enduring optimism. They believed in the cyclical nature of the universe as a process of returning to a state of perfection, not as a cause for despair, but as an opportunity for rebirth and improvement. For them, the grand cosmic play was less about the individual actors and more about the overarching harmony and balance of the cosmos. They found contentment in the constancy of change and in the pursuit of aligning with what they deemed the highest good. This philosophical stance reflects a profound acceptance of the natural order and a hopeful anticipation of the universe's perpetual cycles of renewal, embodying a deep-seated belief in the resilience and regenerative capacity of the cosmos. In the philosophical tapestry woven by the Stoics, there lies a narrative of eternal recurrence, where the extinguishing light of life is but a temporary eclipse, destined to be reignited with the dawn of each new day. This forms the core of a never-ending cycle of existence and non-existence, a testament to the resilience and perpetuity of life. Central to this worldview is a profound declaration attributed to Socrates, who, in the face of his judges, asserted the imperviousness of the virtuous man to evil, both in life and beyond death, under the vigilant care of the gods. This assertion encapsulates the essence of Stoicism, which proclaims virtue as the sole genuine good, and the cosmos as a domain governed by a providential order. To delve into the significance of Socrates' assertion requires an exploration of the Stoic conviction that the experience is traditionally deemed adverse by the majority hold no true malice towards the righteous individual. Seneca, contemplating the quandary of why misfortunes befall the virtuous, emphatically denies the possibility of any real harm afflicting the good person. In his view, the antithetical natures of good and evil preclude their coexistence. What is detrimental to the virtuous has been divinely removed. Eradication of vices, transgressions, malicious intentions, unbridled desires, and avarice, by divine intervention, underscores a detachment from worldly concerns among the virtuous, who place no value on material possessions or external approval. Epicurus, adopting a fragment of Socrates' Apology, integrated this notion into the bedrock of Stoic philosophy, heralding it as a guiding principle. This perspective, challenging conventional wisdom, posits that the true anomaly lies not within the philosophy of the Stoics, but in the societal inability to grasp its depth. The Stoic paradox, suggesting that those outside its fold are ensnared in folly, reflects a misinterpretation or underestimation of the doctrine's comprehensive nature by those accustomed to more confined intellectual horizons. The critique of Aristotle's acknowledgement of the complex interplay between virtue and external factors illustrates a broader Stoic critique of other philosophical schools, which, in their view, failed to recognize the supremacy of virtue as the sole arbiter of a good life. Thus, Stoicism invites a radical reevaluation of values, advocating for a life where virtue, in harmony with the natural order and divine providence, constitutes the only true good. In this light, Adversity is not an obstacle but a crucible for the refinement of virtue, with the divine cosmos acting not as a capricious force but as a rational, guiding principle ensuring that, for the virtuous, the essence of good remains inviolate. This philosophical stance offers a beacon of resilience, advocating for a steadfast adherence to virtue amidst the flux of fortunes and positing a universe where, despite the apparent cycles of loss and renewal, the moral integrity of the virtuous remains unassailable. It's a narrative that perpetually unfolds, wherein the luminance of life momentarily dims only to be reignited with the dawn of each new day, encapsulates the Stoic vision of existence as an eternal cycle of emergence and dissolution. It's at this concept, where the distinction between being and non-being blurs, underpins the Stoic belief that for the virtuous, there is neither harm nor neglect from the gods in life or beyond. Socrates, in his defense before his judges, articulated this core Stoic principle, that virtue alone constitutes the good and that the cosmos operates under a divine providence. This philosophy asserts that what is commonly deemed misfortune cannot fundamentally afflict the virtuous, for in the grand schema orchestrated by providence, what is truly bad is redefined. Addressing the perennial question of why adversity befalls the virtuous posits that no genuine harm can assail a person of integrity, for the divine has purged all genuine evils, moral failings like vice, greed, and malice. From this Stoic tenet suggests that the virtuous are aligned with a higher order, indifferent to material loss, embodying Socrates' assertion as a Stoic maxim. The external cannot corrupt the internal sanctum of virtue. This Stoic perspective often clashed with Aristotelian philosophy, particularly in its acceptance of passions and external goods as components of happiness. The Stoics criticized Aristotle for diluting the purity of virtue by incorporating these elements, viewing his acknowledgement of passions akin to endorsing ailment in moderation. They argued that while Aristotle correctly elevated virtue as the supreme good, his failure to dismiss the significance of all else betrayed the essence of ethical perfection. Stoicism, in its rigorous advocacy for the primacy of the soul's virtues over bodily and external goods, nevertheless recognized the latter's role in the human condition, while asserting the superior value of spiritual over physical or material well-being. Stoics conceded that the goods of fortune, health, wealth, and external circumstances merit consideration, albeit secondary. Moreover, Stoicism's religious fervor did not translate into a doctrine of fear or divine retribution, but emphasized a relationship with the divine rooted in rational understanding and the pursuit of virtue. This sharply diverged from and critiqued traditional religious teachings that employed fear of divine judgment as a moral cudgel. Both Stoicism and Epicureanism dispensed with the fear of gods, with Epicurean deities remaining aloof from human affairs and the Stoic divine embodying rationality and incapable of wrath. Stoicism's moral philosophy, which prioritizes virtue overall, logically extends to the belief that authenticity and moral integrity surpass the superficial allure of wealth, pleasure, or power. This ethos heralds the intrinsic worth of the individual, irrespective of external attributes or possessions, foreseeing a vision of universal peace and recognition of human dignity that remains an aspirational ideal. Thus, Stoicism, in its essence, not only refined the concept of virtue, but also anticipated a future where the worth of each person is acknowledged and revered, laying the groundwork for a society governed by principles of justice, equanimity, and in envisioning a world where divinity is paternal and humanity is fraternal. The Stoics advanced a revolutionary concept of universal brotherhood, transcending the limitations and exclusivities of the polis, the city-state central to Greek philosophical thought. This vision starkly contrasts with the societal structures proposed by Plato and Aristotle, whose ideal states remained deeply rooted in the Greek city's hierarchical and exclusionary practices. Plato's Republic, for instance, distinguishes sharply between classes, allocating material and spiritual goods unevenly and prioritizing the intellectual and guardian classes over the lower laboring strata. Aristotle, in his political theory, further entrenches this divide, viewing the majority of the populace as mere components rather than integral to the state's fabric. His acceptance of slavery as a natural institution exemplifies a profound lack of empathy and a failure to grasp the emerging consciousness of universal human dignity that was beginning to dawn even in his era. Aristotle's concept of the natural slave and his assertion of the inherent superiority of Greeks over other peoples are attempts to rationalize and justify the prevailing social inequalities and exploitative practices of his time. While there are fleeting acknowledgments of human rights in his ethics, these are not robust or foundational to his philosophical system. His concession that a slave, being human, might be treated justly and thus capable of forming a type of friendship, does not mitigate the underlying premise of his argument, that a slave is akin to a living tool, an instrument of labor devoid of the rights and respects accorded to a free citizen. His perspective on slavery and the hierarchical structuring of society reflects a broader indifference to the intrinsic value of every individual, regardless of their social or economic status. Aristotle's observation that humans, like other animals, naturally care for members of their own species, hints at a universal principle of empathy and mutual regard. Yet, this insight stands in tension with his acceptance of social and political inequalities as natural or justified. In contrast, Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, proposed a model of a cosmopolitan republic, a radical departure from the city-state paradigm that dominated Greek thought. In Zeno's ideal, the distinctions that defined and divided people within the traditional polis, such as class, race, and even free status versus slavery, were to be transcended in favor of a universal community grounded in virtue and rationality. This Stoic republic was inclusive, envisioning a society where every individual's dignity was recognized and where the well-being of the whole was prioritized over individual self-interest. Zeno's vision was not merely theoretical but aimed at the practical realization of a just and equitable world order, where the concept of man as brother under a paternal God would guide interpersonal relations and the organization of society. Thus, the Stoic ideal challenges the exclusivity and hierarchical nature of earlier philosophical systems, advocating for a more compassionate and inclusive understanding of community. It represents a significant ethical advancement, emphasizing the universal application of justice and the recognition of the inherent worth of every individual, prefiguring modern concepts of human rights and global citizenship. Of the Stoic philosophy, with its roots in the teachings of Zeno of Citium, represents a seminal shift in the conceptualization of virtue and humanity within the ancient Greek intellectual tradition. Unlike earlier Greek thinkers for whom virtue was a privilege of the affluent and influential, Stoicism introduced the revolutionary idea that virtue was accessible to all, irrespective of one's societal status. This inclusivity paralleled the teachings of Christianity, where the spiritual kingdom of Christ was open to everyone, transcending distinctions between barbarians, citizens, slaves, and the free. So in the Stoic view, engaging with philosophy and, by extension, serving the divine principle, constituted the truest form of liberty. A liberty attainable at any juncture in one's life through the cultivation of a specific mental disposition. This disposition, the Stoic mindset, was not reserved for the elite but was a universal ideal, attainable by anyone from princes to slaves. This stands in stark contrast to the Greek ethos of natural nobility, replacing it with the conviction that nobility derives from virtue and the quality of one's mind, not birthright or social standing. Thus, Stoicism democratized access to virtue, asserting that everyone, regardless of origin, is of divine descent and thus capable of achieving moral excellence. The Stoic community was a field ripe for the sowing of goodness, open to all who chose the path of virtue over the accidents of birth or fortune. The Stoic principle of cosmopolitanism went hand in hand with a profound sense of global kinship and moral responsibility towards others. Over time, however, the term cosmopolitanism has evolved, often being interpreted in a narrower sense as merely freedom from national ties. The Stoics envisioned something far more expansive. They saw their citizenship as belonging not just to their immediate city-state or the earth, but to the entire cosmos, inclusive of all its inhabitants. The greatest cities of their time, such as Rome, Ephesus, and Alexandria, were considered mere dwellings within this grand, universal city. From this perspective, exile was akin to relocating within this cosmic city, and death was simply a transition from one domain to another. This Stoic cosmopolitanism, embracing the notion that all of humanity shares a common divine origin and destiny, challenged the prevailing societal norms and laid the groundwork for a more inclusive understanding of community and individual worth. It underscored the belief that virtue and moral excellence are the true measures of a person's nobility, transcending conventional boundaries of class, race, and nationality. In doing so, Stoicism contributed significantly to the development of early humanitarian ideals, advocating for a world in which the dignity of every individual is recognized and respected, and where the pursuit of virtue is seen as the highest calling available to all. The Stoic philosophy, renowned for its profound ethical insights and cosmopolitan worldview, was initially articulated by Zeno in his Republic and subsequently echoed and expanded upon by his successors, including Chrysippus and their followers. This philosophical tradition, with its emphasis on universal brotherhood and the equality of all people in the pursuit of wisdom, resonated across cultural boundaries, attracting attention from thinkers of diverse backgrounds. Notably, it influenced the works of figures such as the author of the Peripatetic Dundro, who might have been Jewish, as well as confirmed Jewish scholars like Philo and St. Paul. These thinkers, along with Roman intellectuals like Cicero, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, integrated Stoic principles into their teachings, writings, and, in the case of Aurelius, personal reflections on governance and morality. Marcus Aurelius, in particular, exemplifies the Stoic ideal of living as a citizen of heaven or the cosmos, even while holding a position of immense earthly power as Emperor of Rome. His meditations reflect a deep engagement with Stoic thought, emphasizing the importance of virtue, inner peace, and the recognition of one's place within the larger tapestry of existence. This perspective allowed Aurelius and other Stoic thinkers to transcend provincial and nationalistic identities, advocating for a sense of global citizenship long before the modern concept of globalization. The spread of Stoicism and its cosmopolitan ideals can also be seen as a direct consequence of Alexander the Great's expansion into the East, which facilitated a cultural and intellectual exchange between Greece and the vast territories it came into. This fusion of ideas contributed to a significant shift in philosophical thought from Hellenistic parochialism to a more inclusive universal approach. The fact that many of the leading figures in Stoic philosophy were not native Greeks, but came from various parts of the newly connected world, underscores the movement's inherent cosmopolitanism. It reflects a broader trend of the period. Knowledge and wisdom were no longer seen as the exclusive domain of the Greek elite, but were recognized as accessible to and enrichable by people from all corners of the known world. This era of philosophical enlightenment was not without its conflicts, as the influx of outsiders into the realm of Greek intellectual life sometimes led to tension and resistance. However, these clashes also served as a catalyst for growth and diversification in philosophical thought, challenging traditional notions of who could be a bearer of wisdom and a contributor to the collective understanding of virtue, ethics, and the nature of the good life. The Stoic embrace of cosmopolitanism and their belief in the universal accessibility of wisdom marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of philosophical thought, laying the groundwork for subsequent developments in ethics, political philosophy, and the understanding of human rights and dignity.